It is now 5:30, and I will call our work session to order. We have quite a few guests in the room, so let's go around and introduce ourselves around the table, and then we'll get to Commissioner Sterner when you're first on the agenda, sir. But we're going to go around the room. Michelle?
Michelle Collins, City Clerk.
Dan Gustafson, City Council.
Vince Workman, City Council.
Ryan Peterson, Public Works Director.
Jenny Faulkner, Community Development Director.
And then we'll go to
Greg Lindberg, Deputy City Manager.
Melanie Lee, City Manager.
Dan Keeley, Burnsville City Council.
Kara Schultz, City Council.
Krista Shadjet, Economic Development.
Lee Folkstead, Economic Development Commission.
Okay.
Chris Cleveter, Economic Development. Peter Graffs from Community Relations.
Thank you.
I'm Ted Redmond, Pale Blue Dot, Sustainability Planning.
Thank you.
Sue Bast, Environmental Specialist, City of Burnsville.
Skip Meadhouse, Economic Development. Chris Forsland, Licensing Code Enforcement.
Regina Dean, Assistant Community Development Director.
Jason Arzoldo Dellers.
Al Anderson, Economic Development.
Eric Newman, Economic Development.
Excellent. And Jennifer and Tim, would you introduce yourselves, please?
Dan Copley, Economic Development Commission.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Couts. I'm the mayor. And at our work sessions, we go directly to our agenda. And the first item on the agenda is Councilmember Representative Phil Sterner, who represents us at the Met Council. And sir, we only have about 10 minutes for you because we have a really, really big agenda, and we have our development tools policy that's going to be a big discussion with all of our commissioners from the Economic Development Commission here this evening. And we thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us. And I think this is the first time, or maybe the second, it is the second, because Bonnie Featherstone was our commissioner at the Met Council back in the 90s, and then now you. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'll stand. Maybe you can see me over the podium here a little bit.
Very
But
good.
most of you have maybe some relatedness with me, but I'm Phil Sterner, and I live in Burnsville, and I've lived here in 2 cycles. So I grew up in Apple Valley at least as an 8-year-old, and my parents were in the Air Force, so so I moved around a lot, but that's where we settled, Apple Valley. Then as a young adult in Burnsville, and I'm back there and raised my family in Rosemont. So pretty related to the community. I went to school at St. Thomas. So I have 5 children, and I'm the youngest of 4. I have 3 older sisters that they all live 2 in Burnsville, 1 in Lakeville. So we're real close by, and my parents are still with me as well. So I'm kind of excited to be here, and so I represent, the first slide will be, the 4 district. I'm District 15. And so besides Burnsville, I also represent Eagan, Inver Grove Heights, and Rosemont. And most of ours is kind of a developing suburbs that transition into the redevelopment kind of thing. And then, of course, like Rosemont, I think in some parts of Inver Grove Heights is a little bit like a rural developing community. But Burnsville and Eagan are kind of like more of a redevelopment here. And so we want to do growth by helping diversify housing options and transportation for workforce, as well as maintain our quality of life and amenities. And what I was just appointed, so I'm new. On March 6th, I got appointed by Governor Walz, and so I'm on the Environment Committee, in which we oversee the wastewater treatment. There's 8 plants in the 7-county district, with 4 of them actually being in either District 15 or ours, or 16 just south here. So it's quite a bit is here, but it's pretty exciting seeing how we treat the water and how quick it turns around. So I visit almost half the plants, or over half the plants now, and I'm trying to look at some of the more. But we're really efficient on the water by working together with Metropolitan Council, that we're 41% lower cost of our wastewater than anywhere else with our peer cities in the nation, and so that's really helpful to keep our costs down. And I'm also on the Transportation Committee, so we oversee all the Metro Transit, so as well as Metropolitan Transportation Services. So anything from Dial Ride to the Orange Line that's going to be coming up, or your express one is all under our purview in that. And we work with, of course, we're an opt-out here with Minnesota Valley Transit Authority, so 3 of the 4 communities I serve are represented by Minnesota Valley Transit Authority. And then they have me as chair as Investment Review Committee, where we look at what our investments are, but just like the city, we're very conservative in what we do, investments in. So most of us just trying to align with being local investments, where we want to work with local banks and who will in turn work with the money in projects with either cities or businesses that could use the local dollars to kind of generate with businesses and people in their community. So we worked on that, as well as we changed our sustainability policy too. We added a little bit of language in that this year already. And then I'm the representative for the Clean Water Council. So that's been pretty interesting. In fact, today and tomorrow is a water resource conference over at River Center in St. Paul, so I've been attending that. But it's pretty fascinating because the board has everyone from fishing interests onto it to agriculture interest, to like people from the University of Minnesota. So we have a lot of voices on the council, and I really enjoy that as well. And so I'm just going to update on the Orange Line, which you probably know more than I do at this point, but it's but basically all the funds are secured, and I'm really excited with it. And we have the 2 stops that are in Burnsville right now. Which one is just on Burnsville Parkway, and then at the heart of the city down. And I think that's going to really help our development, really the nature of the heart of the city. And they are studying for additional stops, either for like where the County Road 42 intersection is, as well as down to 50. So I'm here to help you work with your city and the county and that to make what you feel will happen. But I think it's going to be a really good ridership on it, and really will help what we're looking for. So it's going to start on that bus rapid transit station in the spring of 2020. And your 2 stations will be done by December of 2021. They're scheduled to be all completed by then. So you can sign up for the newsletter if you're not already on that, but that's available to you as well. And so I won't go into a lot of detail just by the brevity of time here, but we're basically it'll show the timeline, and you all will have at least a packet in front of you, so you can kind of go back to see what the future time is in that. And we're here to kind of support you in conversations and even like with Minnesota Valley Transit. So invite me to anything that you feel you want to be here, and I want to be very supportive and be related to the council. And then you kind of are doing sustainability tonight, it sounds like, and that's something we're talking about just at our last metropolitan meeting. And so most of it, like what I'm seeing as a big thing is what we're dealing with is we have about 5 inches more of rainfall this year, or actually the last decade, more than we've done the decades before that, and it's being high water. So you can kind of see where we're dealing with the chance of increase of water, and then the high heat, and especially in the summer times we're seeing a lot more heat, so they can be more cooling costs or the comfort level is different. And of course you're not seeing as many seasons, like where the fall's been a little bit shorter. Maybe we'll get a little bit back, but it's you're seeing that. And then some of the risk of heavy snowfall and severe thunderstorms or tornado, those are kind of relatively low of happening. And to deal with it, we either got to use the resilience, adaptation, or mitigation to kind of solve that. And we have a couple of things that we're looking at. But like one big example is like our treatment plant in St. Paul, our Metro plant does about 70% of all the sewage treatment. Well, the water's so high right now, they're dealing with like when it's springtime where they usually build up the walls and that kind of thing. And here we're in the fall time, so have to kind of like deal with those kind of issues, what we support, or the storm water, which we're not trying to treat it, but the more we have, does that affect like what we're treating, the volume of water we're dealing with. So. And so basically our Met Council will offer like some tools to help your community, and you can reach out to our staff or myself about that. But like we have an extreme heat story map, you get a map tool, extreme heat map tool, or you're localizing flooding, but these are all available for you to use or ask on. And we pretty much, community development, we have some contacts with that. Well, we want to partner ship with you, and, you know, obviously, like your planners, you know, that's what they do all day is, and you have Patrick Boynton, that's, you know, assigned to your city as like kind of our lead planner, but we have other people that assist you to what you need, you know, from us. And then I think that, well, I guess I probably talked about this on the last slide, but the infrastructure is, you know, being made to be more resistant to flooding. So both our transit facilities and our wastewater interceptor and our plant system. And these are our directors that you can kind of go to if you haven't had, but we got Wes Koistra, who actually just lives in Savage to that, and as of the beginning of the year, he's our new transportation, Metro Transit manager. And then we have Nick Thompson, who is Director of Metropolitan Transportation Services, but they can kind of deal with that. And then Lisa is our head planner in that, and she's also the lead on sustainability as well, so she's a good resource. And then Lisa Thompson, she's our general manager for environmental services. And you also can contact me on my information, and I'll drop us some cards afterwards and that then. So I don't know if you have time for questions. I think I'm under 10 minutes, but
Thank you so much. I'm going to see if there is, Councilmember Keeley.
Thank you, Phil. I'm glad you're coming in and bringing a presentation and engaging. I hope you'll come back more often. One thing, thank you for being on transportation. As the liaison to the transportation, I just want to petition the rest of the council to allow you as much time as you want to present here and take questions, because we rely on you on funding for MVTA. So we want to make sure that you're well taken care of. Need any water, anything, just let me know. We'll get it taken. It would be great to see you at our future MBTA meeting when we invite our Met Council representatives.
Okay.
And I think one of them may have been already scheduled this year. I don't know if you were able to make it.
yeah,
I
there was
wasn't.
one, I think
out.
it was like double booked. I can't remember what
so
it was, but I couldn't
Good.
make it.
Well,
But
we'll
I
have to
plan on
both make
being
the next
there.
one. But when it comes to transportation advocacy on behalf of your districts, it'd be great to know just, how you see your role to ensure that MBTA, for instance, is represented in the needs of MBTA. And then secondly, who from the Met Council, or is there a single person assigned to the I-35 Solutions Alliance from the Met Council, or is it something that you could also attend?
From the rep, that's a good one, because I didn't see if there's someone appointed, but I think I could definitely attend on that as
Yeah.
well, and I could check in if someone was assigned. And you kind of segued into something, Dan, about the transportation, because right now we're kind of looking at the planning of like what kind of transportation service, so even if you don't look like where it goes, but like what kind of service. Do we need more express buses? Do we want more stop kind of thing? Do we want it to go like a longer period of time, but maybe not as, buses per hour? Do we want it more, less, but, more consistent, like every 15 minutes or so? But we're trying to see what the transportation is, and so I'm trying to, of course, advocate that we have more transportation out here and more consistent, that we work, MBTA and Metropolitan Transit works together, so we got the east-west going with the north-south. Like for myself personally, I see the red line, the orange line, there should be an easy east-west where you can, go either using Cliff Road or Burnsville Parkway or McAndrew or something like that can go through on that, just so we have the consistency and we're picking it up, and it would really help us out in this area. I know, I did a tour last week, it was with Micah, who worked with housing, and we went to the nonprofit organization, I can't remember, but they're in Grace Lutheran in Apple Valley. The biggest thing, they said the teens had a difficulty with transportation. And so if there's a way of tokens or that consistent transportation to get them to the jobs or recreation, that would be a huge thing for them.
That'd be great. I sit on the committee with MBTA for innovation and partnerships, and those are the types of scenarios that we'd like to set a meeting with to talk about their resources. We're doing it with Fairview Hospital right now. There's an existing model that we built off the Amazon partnership for that kind of thing. So I would invite you to the next I-35 Solutions. From a 35 corridor, it really, in its brand, you would think it's only I-35 subject matter, but it actually branches off into networks that I-35 connect with. So the 494, Cedar and some other, 169, and Highway 13. So I think it'd be great to have you at the table representing your district, which you'll have 2 or 3 of your council, mayor, or staff, folks from your district there. And then it'd be great, the MBTA, I think because you're on the Transportation Committee, I'd invite you personally to come attend those meetings. And I think do it outside of just that quarterly check-in with the Met Council members. That one's, it's good, but for you, I think it'd be much more productive, especially to ramp up on a knowledge base on where we've been and where we're going. If you could, I don't know if you have any scheduling conflicts on Wednesday, that usually the 4th Wednesday of the month.
What time is it at about?
4:30.
4:30, okay, yeah, once in a
Yeah.
while have some, because that's exactly what our council meets is for Wednesday or the committee of the whole, but let's see what we
Yeah,
can. Pull
so,
together. Yeah.
offline, maybe we can meet, and I'd like to catch up on it, but it's a big deal for this whole region, and certainly for Burnsville, inclusive of the Orange Line coming on and having 2 new stations, but MBTA has obviously been servicing this area for a long time, and we're working on a lot of new innovative types of things, which did help to win the MBTA, the Transit Provider of the Year by the State Transit Association last week. So, little plug in there for MBTA's innovative thinking. So, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming. And I would also suggest that don't wait for an invitation if you have some things that you believe that we should know about. And you can connect with Melanie and see when you can come in. But thank you for sharing all of the materials that you brought with. We will take a look at it. And I really appreciate your coming in tonight and informing us, because informing us, you're also informing all of our citizens, because it's on TV.
Oh, well, okay.
And it'll also be streamed, and anybody can check in with it if they missed watching us this evening.
Okay.
So thank you so much for coming in, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
Thank you. All right. And now we move into our sustainability report, and presenting is Ms. Sue Bast. And I believe that you're also going to be introducing our consultant.
Yes.
Yes, and make sure everybody knows a little bit about you too, Sue, because you wrote this program from the very beginning, from 2000. I think you wrote the white paper, 2000 and I think it was 2007, because we had to start with the white paper for our governance.
Yes, thank you, yes.
And adopted it in 2000.
Right, February 2009.
Yep.
We adopted the Sustainability Guide Plan. And that was quite a process, a lot of work by certainly not just me, but all the staff. And we had consultants for that too. And ended up with a great plan, and actually accomplished quite a bit. We have completed many of the goals in that plan, and now our knowledge of sustainability since that time has grown and changed. Technology has changed, and so now we're in the process of updating that plan. So we are looking to update that plan because trying to have our sustainability needs met for the present and then also into the future. Ted Redmond is assisting us, of Pale Blue Dot, is assisting us with that task. And he'll be sharing information on what has happened so far in the process and what the tentative process coming up is going to be. Staff is looking for input from the City Council on the process, as well as areas of that you would like us to focus on. So Ted will be taking over. And if you have any questions, I'll be here.
Okay, very good. Do you have a PowerPoint presentation that'll give us some more information than the one-pager that we received?
I think so. I'm not fully aware of the one pager, but I think it's got
Pardon?
perhaps.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. So the little agenda that I had for my next 10, 15 minutes was a little introduction of who I am, talk a little bit about observation of sustainability in Burnsville, the process for the planning underway for the sustainability guide plan. I wanted to share with you some preliminary survey feedback that we've received from our community engagement efforts, and then a little bit about next steps. So, as Sue said, I'm Ted Redmond. I'm an architect and an urban planner with Pale Blue Dot, and we focus entirely on climate planning, sustainability planning, and renewable energy planning. One of our more recent work actually is the climate vulnerability assessment that we did for the city of Burnsville about 1.5 years ago now. So just a few observations about sustainability in Burnsville. There's a lot to say about sustainability in Burnsville and the efforts that the city's gone through. But just to name a few, you guys have fantastic public education and outreach. The videos that you do, Sue's quarterly updates are fantastic. The energy use reductions for city operations is something to really tout, and a good leadership within the metro area, I think. And of course, the relationship that has to our greenhouse gas reductions that the city operations also has been able to illustrate great leadership on. You've achieved step 5 for Green Step cities, which there's only a handful of cities in the state that have done that. And that's really quite an achievement. You've got great illustrations of green facilities like the ice arena with the using of geothermal. You've completed your climate vulnerability assessment. The climate adaptation planning is underway, as well as the sustainability guide plan update underway. And one thing I'll point out is that you're probably recalling this, but in the 2016 community survey that the city did, 88% of the residents polled believed that it was important for the city to address climate change. And so I think another observation to point out is that when the city did the original sustainability guide plan, that was really an illustration of leadership. It was not a very common planning effort certainly in the Midwest, but really in the United States. There were only a handful that had been done. So I think the fact that you're redoing it allows the opportunity to continue that leadership. So I just congratulate you for that, I think. So planning underway, some of what we've done to date. So, of course, this is an update to the 2009 plan. It's going to provide guidance on sustainability for the city over the next 10 years, and we'll also maybe potentially identify potential beyond that. But really, we're focusing on what actionable items for the next 10 years. We're going to be establishing goals based on community baseline metrics, so assessing kind of where we are today, and then let's make some goals off of that. And then we'll create strategies and detailed actions for both for achieving those goals, both at the city operations level as well as the community-wide level. So what we've done to date, first we reviewed the original guide plan and the implementation, get a good sense as kind of how things have gone on that. We've conducted some initial community outreach. We've gone to a few events, the Party on the Plaza, the international event. We've also put out a community survey, online survey, and to date we've got about 195 respondents, and we're thinking we'll keep it active through the end of the month. And then after that, I mean, we can keep it up and running for as long as we want, but that'll give us good feedback initially. We've also finished conducting a community-wide sustainability baseline assessment, which covers a lot of ground. It includes things like greenhouse gas emissions, citywide, as well as city operations, which you do regularly with Michael Orange. Land use metrics, and land use, we're looking at a wide range of land use, like density of residential, density of commercial, jobs per acre of commercial property, ambient noise, ambient light, parkland, many metrics. And those we're also comparing against comparable communities within the metro area. So trying to give you a sort of a baseline in terms of where you are, but also how do you compare with other communities. Transportation metrics, renewable energy potential study we've done, buildings and energy efficiency metrics, community health metrics, climate vulnerability, of course, from the assessment previously, solid waste and renewable energy baseline metrics, ground cover metrics, which are tree canopy, as well as grass, water, impervious surfaces, and how those relate to things like water runoff and heat island on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. And water metrics and access to local food. So trying to put together as much metric as we possibly can to get a good sense as to how things are in the community, and then help tease out where can we advance even more improvement. So moving ahead, the process that we're looking at is we're going to be working with the staff planning group to review and develop some recommended sustainability goals from all those metrics that we just talked about. And then we'll explore, develop, and refine strategies and actions to achieve those goals. Then we plan on assembling a stakeholder group, which could involve, community members, businesses, local business representatives, other agencies like the county or watershed district, those sorts of things. And then use that stakeholder group to provide reaction and feedback to the goals and strategies that are developed, so we get a good sense from a broad stakeholder group. And then after that, we'll then develop a draft of the full guide plan update. We'll conduct some additional community outreach, and we'll design that with the group what exactly that looks like, but it probably are things like some town hall meetings, maybe another survey with specific questions about options that we've got in the plan. And then we'll review the whole enchilada with staff and the stakeholder group for final feedback, refine and finalize the plan. So the structure of the guide plan is still, we're not sure exactly what the structure is. We anticipate there might be some changes in terms of the categories from the original guide plan. Just as Sue mentioned, the state of the art has changed and our knowledge base altogether has changed. So just preliminarily, we're thinking that the categories will likely include greenhouse gas emissions, land use, transportation, renewable energy, buildings and efficiency, community health and climate adaptation, solid waste, ground cover, water, and local food. And what we'll likely have within each of those categories are some strategy goals that might be priority goals, and then goals that might be like longer reach goals, so that we can prioritize where the city can put its efforts. Because clearly there's limited staff time, there's limited resources. So if you have 1 million goals and 1 million strategies and one staff person trying to do it, that might be too much, right? So we'll try to prioritize where things might get focused to help streamline that. So now just a little bit about the preliminary survey, the feedback that's been received. As I noted, we've got the online survey up and running. If you haven't taken it yet, I encourage you to. It'd be great to get your input. And if you wouldn't mind maybe just distributing it to folks that you know, it'd be awesome just to get more constituents involved in it. The URL is just paleblue.LLC/Burnsville-sustainability-survey. But if you just go to our website, you can search for Burnsville and it'll come up. So it's pretty easy to get to.
Ryan?
It's also on the city's website.
And
It
it's
is on the city's website. It is also on Facebook, because I've shared it.
Awesome.
Can I ask where it is on the
I
city?
can't
Because I
find it.
can't.
On the city website. Where's Marty? I think
with it, I can't
it's
find it.
when you go into the city website
Natural
and then you
resources
search.
area.
Yeah,
I will see if I can.
search sustainability survey.
Did you get to that?
Yeah,
So
what-
you
what
go
now?
under natural resources, click
Yeah.
on environment and sustainability.
Oh,
And
and
it
there's,
brings
under
you right
city
there.
services,
Yeah.
then
Got it.
natural
City
resources.
services.
There we go.
Yep.
City services at
Yeah.
the top.
City services then, okay.
Okay.
We can maybe think about how to highlight that a little bit
Yeah.
more.
So it's like a 5-10 minute
Yeah.
maybe survey. So some of the input that we've received out of the roughly 200 folks that have taken it so far. Some of the important sustainability considerations for the city of Burnsville, sort of higher ranking issues
The
were
water.
clean and reliable drinking water, reduction of landfill waste, high quality parks and facilities and recreation programs, improving stormwater management and watershed, increasing health of Burnsville's trees, and reduce energy consumption, all rated over 80% of the respondents saw those as important characteristics or considerations. Concern over climate change, over 80% of the respondents reported being concerned or very concerned about climate change. Over 91% of the respondents reported being personally impacted by one or more impacts of climate change, which actually I was surprised that it was that high. Concern over potential impacts of climate change, the higher ranking ones were water quality impacts, impacts on human health, air quality impacts, tree or plant loss, ecosystem impacts, risks to vulnerable individuals, and food security, all rated over 70%. So next steps, where we're going from here, we'll be establishing the stakeholder group, as we mentioned. That role will be, as I say, supporting building consensus for near, mid, and long-term goals, supporting and exploring goals, strategies, and actions, and support in identifying what the community might need to be empowered to implement those strategies. The commitment we're thinking is probably 2 workshops, one perhaps in January or February to review some preliminary content, and then one towards maybe April, May to review sort of a final draft and give us good final input. And then we're looking for recommendations. Obviously, we're open to recommendations for who you think might be involved. We have a list of potential folks, but clearly we want to make sure it's engaging you all. So typically for this kind of group, we look for a few business leaders, folks that are understanding business community and well integrated into the community. Community group leaders, resident representatives, all would be fantastic. And then in addition to that, we'll recommend probably, like some folks from the county watershed district, that sort of thing. So, of course, we're open for any questions whatsoever, but also just looking to see if there's any feedback on those preliminary categories or candidates for stakeholder group, or clearly anything.
I'm going to move on. Councilmember Schultz.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. The first question, a resident texted me and said, where is complete streets in this, in your evaluation?
Transportation.
Is that under transportation, and then who is assigned to that team to work on that?
Well, complete streets would be in transportation, but I'm not sure what you mean by assigned to work on that specifically.
Who would you
Ryan?
be liaisoning?
Yeah, it would definitely be in the public works engineering area. We don't have a complete streets work group or anything like that at this time. Obviously, we're always looking for ways to improve.
But we have a guide that says that when we're looking at street reconstruction, you always review the complete streets. Guidance in terms of, do you get into bike lanes and do you get to 3 lanes or 2 lanes or 4 lanes? Because that's what you have in some of the guide plans that I've read.
I mean, I would say we're looking for opportunities when they present themselves. For instance, our trial this year on bike lanes, on-street bike lanes is something that we're going through this year. But, for replacing a street, oftentimes it does go back very similar condition.
Because I remember Steve Albrecht talking about complete streets, and that Public Works always reviews it when you're doing street reconstruction to see if you can do some things to include all of that, so.
Right.
Yeah, Kara.
Okay, so for local food, when you're evaluating us for that, and I know this is something that maybe City Council will have to take a look into, we have some fairly heavy restrictions on allowing farmers markets and anything like that. So are you going to be looking at what city policies and ordinances we have in place and designate ones for review?
Yeah, in instances like that, yes, we can look through that.
So I think one of the things that you might sue and everybody, that we have community gardens all over, and it started with us when we put in the community gardens out on Neal Park, and then in all of the parks that we can put a community garden in. And then we also have partnerships with churches.
Absolutely.
And also partnership with the senior housing and the YMCA. So we do have all of that. And Sue, Melanie, I think one of the things is that we need to bring, because we have a council that needs to really be informed about all the things that we have done, and the achievements when you look at local foods and how we got to all of the partnerships also. Valley Natural Foods. And right there by your building, where we have a partnership with them on all of the local community gardens. And one of the things that we used to do, but it's not something that our people who grow, in the fall, there was a time, and I haven't been invited to one, so I don't know if that, but they have a dinner where they put all of the foods, all of the produce that they harvested, and then everybody was sharing, and that was really quite nice. But maybe, people change, and so I don't know who's still doing any of that, but yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, I miss being invited to those, potlucks. Yeah. Did you want to add something before I go back to?
Yeah, just on local
Kara?
food, what I've read, like with resiliency, is oftentimes is there a grocery store within a mile of
Yeah,
every home?
absolutely.
That's a big part of it. So, community gardens are good and all those kinds of things, but they don't meet that need for a disadvantaged population who doesn't have a car, who just really
Yeah.
needs to be able to
Yeah.
get to someplace that offers food. That's primarily what it is, but those other things are also,
Yeah.
would be definitely weighing in.
Yeah, but the thing for desert gardens, destinations, we don't have that. We have a lot of,
We got two
we,
areas, yep.
we have grocery stores around, large stores and small stores, grocery stores, convenience stores that have. But the thing is, I think we need to make sure that we outline what we have done from the first plan, all the things that we have accomplished, because when you look at our water quality, we have 2 lakes that have come off the impaired waters list. I mean, there is so much, and oh, by the way, does anybody still know that we have a green roof over at the water treatment plant, the surface water treatment plant? I don't know, and we've been doing working to work with green roofs. But the businesses, we had one of your colleagues, Ted, Skip, come and talk to our CEO group and talk about the sustainability survey that you were doing. So I think you need to also work with the business community, because we have been working with Excel, and Excel has closed the last coal train came into Excel on April 13, 2015 was the last coal train that came in. And with that reduction, I believe, from what Michelle Swanson had shared with me, it reduced their carbon footprint 46% on their property. So when you add all of those, and I'd ask Sue this, you add all of that and what we have done, what does that all mean with regard to our reduction in greenhouse gas? And I know that a lot of our businesses all have a sustainability plan and how they do that. So our businesses need to be a part of that, and so do our residents. But I think when you look at, also look at all of the things that we've done, I think that needs to be celebrated, Melanie, if we can take a look at all of the accomplishments. Even where our partnership with Kramer and also with Savage, where our activities have recharged the Jordan Aquifer. And people from the Met Council, you folks talk a lot about that. So I think those are the things, we have to celebrate what we had done as we move forward. because people need to know about it. Yes, I'll go to Kara and then I'll go back to Ryan.
Okay, and Ryan might have something on this. And I agree, it's always good to celebrate what we've done. The question I was asking was in these, as I wrote down my notes, was in the section on what can we do in the future. So that's what that is directed towards. And one of the reasons why I asked the farmer's market question is because it is about getting food out, like fresher food out, and diversifying the areas that is available in. Because they tend to right now group in the same areas that we have major shopping in as well, so it really doesn't diversify that. My question though is on the stakeholders group. So how are you going to decide on the stakeholder group? Like what types of persons are you looking for to fill that out? Anyone?
Typically, a successful stakeholder group will have kind of a smattering of folks. So there's allied agencies, right? The county and watershed districts are examples. Could be school district, but entities that are already partnered with you in all sorts of ways that also may have some expertise or overlapping implementation goals, or county does roads, we do roads, et cetera. So usually we look to have a few folks from those kinds of categories, and then folks from a broad input from the community. So as I say, business, community members, community groups. In particular, if there's community groups that have really great connections with underserved populations, perhaps, or folks that we don't necessarily hear from as frequently, right? Because they have a broad perspective, which is great to feed into it. And then also, some resident reps. And so we definitely would look to you if you know of some business leaders or community group leaders or resident reps that you think would be just superb for that, or really well connected with the community that can help, exchange messages back and forth. Those would be the folks that would really be great. They don't necessarily need to have an expertise on sustainability per se. If they do, great, awesome. But if they don't, that's okay too, because they have an expertise on Burnsville. And that's really what ultimately we'd be looking for those folks.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, Ryan?
I guess I would just like to apologize if we were looking for more of our celebration. We didn't really bring that tonight. Most likely in a matter of time, we could talk for a half hour easily on all of our things that we've done over the last 10 years. I understand the point of trying to celebrate those.
We should celebrate those achievements as we think about the future. I mean, all of you, our staff, have worked very hard to do that. Look at what you've done in terms of our construction and reconstruction and all of the reuse of materials and the recycled materials that we do. That has also reduced the cost on our road reconstruction. So I know you guys don't like doing it, but I want to hear it and the people want to hear it. You guys do a great job.
Perhaps when we come back to you again on this, we will have more of a celebration in the past
I would
history.
like to hear more of all
Okay.
of the achievements.
We will do
There is
so.
so much, and maybe sometime we need to take a tour. I mean, I don't know. Vince, have you seen our green roof?
What green roof?
Yeah, see? There you go.
you up there, didn't
Nobody knows.
Nicely
They
done,
don't-
I
Vince.
just threw Ryan under the bus. Yes, I have seen it, yes.
You have seen
We did take him up there.
There you
Just
go.
trying to promote the
Yeah. So,
Just being a team player.
yeah. So there
Sitting
there
right
is,
by him, I couldn't
yeah.
resist.
Go out and see the surface water treatment plant. May not like that. I think it's cool. But there is a lot of great things. Even going through and look at the geothermal system over at the ice center. If you haven't been to and seen the
That is impressive.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that is really something. Yeah, and I mean, there is so much that we have done here, and we're not good at amplifying the achievements that we have done. And so, Melanie. Amplification, amplification, amplification.
And maybe we can find ways of also putting that into the guide plan, like, intro statements, opportunities to do little highlights, because you have done a lot, and that actually represents well to the
Yeah.
public
Yeah.
as a leadership, right? Like, to help people understand, hey, I could do this too.
We have a plan, and guess what? We're achieving the plan, all the outcomes in the plan.
That's right.
I mean, what a concept.
That's right. That's right.
So the thing is, and then when you're at, step 5, they have to always create new steps for us. I think, did we opt out because they didn't have a step 6? Sue? Huh?
We are at the top.
I know it, there's no step 6.
Marty wrote a very nice article in the bulletin this month about our achievement,
Yeah. Yeah,
renewal.
yeah, so those are good things. Are there any other thoughts that we can share with Ted and Sue? If not, if you think about it,
I guess, are
Yeah.
you looking for suggestions on stakeholder groups right now?
If you got them, throw them out. But otherwise, if that's awkward or inappropriate.
Yeah.
When you were kind of explaining what you were looking for, I thought immediately about Chap Thrift Store in Burnsville, because they do a food shelf and are very plugged into the underserved community in Burnsville.
So what was the name again?
Chap
Chap.
Thrift Store.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're kind of a multifaceted business and do quite a bit for the underserved population of Burnsville and the surrounding areas. So.
actually, when you look at all of those retailers, we have the Salvation Army. But I would also say you get the utilities.
Yeah.
And we have 2, Dakota Electric and Excel. But if we think of anything else, we can always let Melanie know, and she'll get it out to staff. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Melanie and Sue, and Ryan, let's celebrate all of your accomplishments.
We have and we will continue to do so, absolutely.
Yeah, well, but
Yes.
it doesn't come around here to get up on TV, okay?
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is our legislative agenda. Melanie.
Yes, Your Honor, or Madam Mayor and council members, we took a little bit of a different approach on the legislative agenda this year. Previously, the councils had 3 positions: priority, supporting, and monitoring. And each of those positions called for a different level of, staff engagement and staff involvement. When we began to look at our existing legislative platform, we started looking at our involvement in our League of Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, MLC, and those associations that also have legislative policies. And we began to kind of cross-reference those and see where is there commonality and where does our position speak really specifically to Burnsville. And what we found is that there are quite a number of positions for which language is, if not identical, very close to what is in a league policy or a Metro Cities policy. So our, what we've brought forward to you is a side-by-side comparison with our current policy, suggested amendments, where our current policy can be found in Metro Cities or league or other organizations, positions, as well as any other background information for council consideration. And based on that, you'll see that we have brought forward a much leaner legislative platform with 3 priority positions. We think that the 3 priorities that the council had in place certainly continue to deserve a high degree of attention. That is the Freeway Landfill and Dump, Fire Protection District, and the Center Village TIF District. So we've reworded slightly, but have brought those forward as priority policies for your consideration. And then we've, this is where you'll see we've slimmed down a little bit under supporting positions. And we are actually recommending 4. One is a very broad advocation for local control. That is the foundation of much of what our policies speak to, is that we ought to have local control. We support local control in our decision-making. We also speak specifically to the host community economic development grant program, very specific to Burnsville, aggregate mining fee,
and the primary service area, which has to do with our ambulance service. So with that as background, I'm happy to talk through any questions or comments you might have and stand for questions. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for really moving through all of these and deleting some of the stuff that we really don't need, and you really focusing our intentions and really defining those. So I really appreciate what has been done. And so when you look at, let's stand with the priorities. Council, your thoughts on the priorities. Does this meet? They haven't changed from last year. So stay the course? Yes, Vince?
Well, and I would just like to, I don't know if this was an addition or if this was in here last year, but for the freeway landfill and dump, the very last statement, I appreciate our supporting non-bonding for remediation to promote economic development.
Yeah,
So
still the
thank you.
same.
I don't know if that was an addition
Yeah,
or
still the
not,
same.
but I'd like to call attention to that because that's important to what I think we collectively desire for that site.
That's part of the handout that has the, and also in here, but has the suggested language that you want to discuss tonight to
The thing
the
is,
language for
yeah,
consideration, right?
you,
It's the
do you,
proposed
do
change,
you,
right? That's-
you look at the legislative priorities and then what Melanie has put in place with regard to,
That's true.
the language for consideration.
Madam Mayor and
Yeah.
Council, perhaps I can lend a little bit more clarity if I wasn't doing so earlier. So this larger document,
Yeah.
it got a little wonky on the iCompass, so we
Yeah.
printed it out for you. The far left is the existing policy language that the council's adopted, and you'll see that teases all the way through to the very last page. And then that second column is language for consideration. And we've underlined the new language that we're suggesting. And you'll see as you walk through it that once you get to about page 4 or 5, we've got quite a number of delete standalone policies for consideration. And then the following column talks about, well, where is that found in the other agencies, other organizations? And then we did do a thorough staff review of this. So it went through, if it had to do with a public works issue, we asked our public works staff to take a look at it and provide their feedback for all of these issues. So we've made that notation. The one item that I will call out is under current policy number 11. And this is a follow-up from a discussion by the council earlier this year when we had brought forward a resolution supporting street improvement districts as requested by the League of Minnesota Cities. That item was pulled because there wasn't, we didn't have a specific policy regarding it.
And if you remember, Council, the discussion we had, it's.
This council did not vote in favor of supporting that.
The only reason we had it is because we were supporting our colleagues, and if a tool was there that they could use, but, that's not something that is, we have an infrastructure trust fund,
Right.
So, and staff is saying, let's delete that, and I'm okay with it. Are you all okay with it? I mean, we have other agencies going after that, and that's okay. It doesn't mean we can be silent on it.
Yeah, the discussion we had, and we can have it again, the majority of the council did not supporting the street improvement district legislation, even though it passed anyway. So we are choosing, maybe we are saying we're silent on it, but the majority of the council at the time did not support that position and did not agree with it, the legislation. So we basically made that clear. That may be up for rediscussion if somebody wanted to bring it up.
It's suggested to be deleted. Ryan?
Yeah, so when we came forward asking for support, there was 2 items. One was the just general state funding for transportation in general.
That's right.
That's stable, and that one went through.
Yeah.
And then we took out the start about the street improvement district.
That's
Just a
right.
couple things I bring up is, we've talked about trying to eliminate assessments. This would potentially be a tool
Yeah.
that we could offset the elimination of special assessments if it was, like right now, no city has the ability to use this tool.
Yeah.
The other item is transparency. There's nothing more transparent than something for a particular cause that goes right to that
Yeah.
area. So that's the only two things I bring up as to
Yeah.
why you may want to consider.
That-
But like you said, we do have the ITF and assessments and
Yeah.
MSA to.
And that's the reason why it was there last year,
What do you mean?
because the transportation, if you look at the language that we have, that's what was in our legislative agenda.
Right, it
And
doesn't,
yeah,
it's silent
and-
on
and-
street
yeah,
improvement
and-
districts. Yep.
But now, staff is recommending that we just delete it as a standalone.
Madam Mayor and Council, yes, as a specific standalone policy that then we would be comfortable with the language in Metro Cities.
Yeah.
I-35W Solutions, the Transportation Alliance.
Yeah.
Which is
They're
basically
carrying that.
suggesting that cities ought to have tools in their toolbox, to use an overwordy term,
Yeah.
to fund the way they feel is appropriate for their local considerations. So, while I understand the conversation, Councilmember Keeley, not, adopting this language would not
Yeah,
oblige the council
yeah,
to adopt any kind of a street improvement district. It would simply say, hey, if Wayzata wanted to do that, okay,
And
whatever, right?
Woodbury.
It's another tool.
yeah.
So that was kind of the premise of staff's thought on this.
And so
But we
it's
did
not
wanna
on
bring it
our
back.
legislative agenda. It's just deleted from our legislative agenda. Yeah, Kara.
If I may ask a clarifying question. So when you're saying we delete these items or, an item from the legislative agenda, but then we have comments and justification, are those comments and justifications part of the document in any way?
Not as proposed by staff. Certainly, we can include whatever the council is comfortable with.
Okay, just checking on that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think what staff is putting out with this spreadsheet is that this is what we have. Here's language to be considered. Here are the other entities that we partner with, who is carrying it. And so the three priorities are still the same with some recommendations and language change, if you guys are okay with that. And then there's the supporting state items. Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
the complication of this is because I-35 Solution supports it doesn't mean that this council supported what that body did.
silent.
And so, as long as we are not adopting a policy from Metro Cities or from the Metro Cities transportation policies that supports what we don't support, then fine. But I know that this is saying delete, but then there's also, what I understand you saying, City Manager Lee, is there's a policy out there by Metro Cities Transportation and I-35 that carries that.
Yeah.
Look, I just don't want us to be saying, yeah, we support that.
No, that's the reason
Because
why
that's why,
that's the reason why it's being deleted from our legislative agenda.
right. I mean, the bottom line, just for the clarity of the folks in the audience that may not have the history on this, street improvement districts is another means of taxation. And this council took that debate up, and we said, we do not need to say, let's add this new tax on top of our existing taxes so we can then fund certain streets, specific streets, that if we were
already have
gonna
a
do
tool in
it, we
place.
would do it from our general levy and our
We have our
ITF.
infrastructure trust
Right.
fund.
In other words, we would be held accountable to make that decision without just adding a new transportation tax that could penalize a specific street or charge owners on a specific street to fix that street. So,
Don't we already do that?
Yeah.
Just through assessments?
well,
That's
it's
right.
more than that.
Ryan,
I
I'm
think the
good.
cost comparison wasn't dollar for dollar.
I'm gonna go to Ryan.
So I called the league today, or the Metro Cities, you can put a street improvement district over your entire city
Yeah,
to pay for street
Yeah.
improvements. You can't now. That would be the concept. I need to be
That's right.
careful what I say, because
Yeah.
you can't now. There is no legislation.
there's
allowing
no
you to do so.
legislation.
We have that, it's called the ITF. The Infrastructure Trust Fund is a citywide street improvement fund. That's been in place since 1994, I believe you said?
No, 1996.
1996.
Yeah. Kara?
And so this might help clarify some of the individual points for me. So in the white sheet that was printed out, it says supporting positions, and it says the City of Burnsville actively participates in League of Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, Municipal Legislative Commission for the advancement of policies, positions that enhance the ability to provide creative and effective public services in a responsible manner. In general, the positions of these three organizations reflect the interests of the City of Burnsville and are supported by the Burnsville City Council. I do not agree with that.
That's why we're before you tonight.
So, like, with that blanket statement, that makes me more cautious on all the rest of it. Without that, I feel really comfortable with how you've laid this out.
You know what I would suggest to Melanie and to all of you? We see this. How about if you bring back where it just has, here are our three priorities, and then here's the supporting items, and here's the ones that we're monitoring. But because this one gives us all of your thinking.
Well,
And
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Under existing language.
Yeah.
That provides everything that is
Yeah.
currently in place.
Yeah.
Supporting, monitoring, and
yeah, I know,
priorities.
but I'm
Do you want it laid out in a different format?
just one sheet so that everybody understands, and it doesn't get into all of this other stuff that has to do with the justification on comments and stuff like that, that I don't know, but it,
Are you talking about just eliminating reference to metro cities and LMC?
yeah,
And
yeah,
these are our
just
priorities?
us.
This is what we're supporting?
Just what we're doing.
We're not even going to
And,
reference
yeah,
LMC.
just don't
or metro
reference-
cities.
Oh, under that supporting positions paragraph, just modify that, certainly.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that so we eliminate the confusion, but just
do that.
here's, yeah. And then on the stuff that you've eliminated, we have this document that says and does anybody agree or disagree with what staff has done with deleting some of the items? No.
I agree with the deletions.
I have a
Yeah,
point of clarification,
okay, which one?
number 3, for our Burnsville Center County Road 42 road development plan.
Yeah, this is the TIF for, and this is the priority. Yeah, number 3.
I'd like to understand what the long-term goal is with this one. If we're denied TIF for a second time, are we going to continue to make that a legislative priority next year?
Yeah.
And every year after
And
that?
I can tell you why. If you're not persistent, we did this with the MRQ. It took us 3 times to get it. You don't give up.
I'm just wondering what the implications of that are to the stakeholders in that area if they are waiting to see if we can, if that could hinder something from happening, if they're just going to wait to do anything contingent on TIF. Whereas if there's just a solution that says TIF's not happening, then something happens.
Dan.
I kind of have some of the same concerns, because I've heard some business owners out there, they're worried that our continual effort to keep going after TIF is preventing some from not doing anything until they see what they can get. And so it's, how long do we keep that up? Or just say,
For the freebie.
I mean, the last few years, I think in the city, we've done a really good job bringing in a lot of development of the city. And we did that through changing of some of our policies. We've done that through zoning changes. That sort of thing has made it happen. And I think that can happen out there as well. Quite frankly, I think that mall just needs a new owner to make something happen, to be honest with you.
Jenny, your thoughts?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I would say last year we were a little late to the party in getting started, and that was our challenge because we approved the redevelopment plan in December. The legislature kicked off in January, and we really didn't have much time to strategize with our lobbyist on what we should be doing. This year, we've got a lobbyist, and we plan to do some strategizing in the next couple of weeks to put together a plan to go forth so that we can be successful, and we have a new lobbyist to help give us guidance on this. It did take us 3 times to do the MRQ, But this comes down to what your preference is and how we spend our time. We put together the vision when we did talk to the stakeholders, if you'll recall. A couple of them said, if we do have assistance, the Seritage Group, that moves us up their priority list. So it's becomes kind of a timing issue. And from what I understand, many other property owners are waiting to see what Seritage does. So the way to move this up is to get assistance, is get the tools available, because without it, it doesn't qualify for anything but tax abatement. So we basically have no tools or grants, right? So then it becomes a waiting game, wait it out. Or we can try to work with Seritage, get tools in our toolbox, and hopefully, assuming they are good on their word, and will do what they say, and as soon as we have something to come to the table with some public improvements, that they'll be ready to redevelop.
I'm not saying we don't try it again this year, but at some point, we have to make a decision that where are we going to spend our energy? Quite frankly, there's a lot of people roaming around this town looking at lots of different properties where we could spend more time getting those done. And we have a group out here that's waiting to see what we'll give them, as opposed to people that are waiting to, or actively looking to do things. I think a lot of our energies need to be spent on those people.
Melanie?
Madam Mayor and Council, to answer kind of the fundamental question from Councilmember Workman, this is your document. So we are this is before you for your priorities for 2020. Certainly in 2020, we are going to be revisiting it again for 2021. So based on your leadership and guidance, we will develop that legislative priorities from that. So I think you raised some very good points. I think it's a good conversation for the council to have. But this is an annual document, and it's certainly not written in stone.
And I'd like to clarify, I'm not asking to strike this now or, set a timetable, but I think it's something that we need to be conscious of as we review this, because there is a level of uncertainty tied to it. And I think uncertainty can prevent things from happening when we would like them to.
And it's a good conversation to have next year.
Let's hope we do
Karen?
well at the legislature.
I also will not ask that this be struck. I will say that the Burnsville Center is not high on my priority list, personally, as a council member, until they decide it is high on their priority list. And we do have other parts of the city that are revitalizing, they're ready to go, and it does deserve our attention. So I am not asking for this to be struck. I do understand that this is a legislative priority agenda. This is not a city focus agenda, what our city focus priority is. And I appreciate the definition between the two, and
So you're okay with
so
that?
I'm
For this year?
Yep, I'm okay with this staying in for this year.
Okay. Dan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to echo Ms. Faulkner's comments. We were late trying to pull all that together because of the timing of our study. So it was our first shot at it, but there wasn't much ramp-up time this year. Certainly have better options or better opportunity with some time to educate the legislators. So I think it certainly has to stay, and I agree with the rest of the council. There will come a time when it could be working against us instead of for us. But I can't let Councilmember Gustafson's comment go by without getting resounding support from me. I think our biggest problem or our biggest opportunity in the mall is the ownership. We've been hearing lip service for the last 3.5, 4 years, and I'm quite frankly tired of it. And I think they need to get off it, move on, or get serious about investing in that center. And there's not much we can do as a council, but I'm tired of listening to chatter and seeing absolutely nothing happen other than backfilling at low rents and not taking care of the place. I've made some comments to the mall manager noting the embarrassment that I felt walking in that center and seeing how they were treating it. They were treating it like it was the last thing on their priority of over 100 centers. And we deserve better in Burnsville.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything else about the priorities? I think we have the priorities, and everybody is in agreeable, and there's consensus about those items to be deleted from this, the items that we are supporting and just monitoring. Okay? All right, thank you so much. Nice job, I thought. Yeah, to review and to go forward. Yes. Okay. Now we are at the development tools, and I think we have our economic development commissioners here this evening. And so you guys, just listen real closely. And I don't know if we can
Could,
get them
Madam
all
Mayor?
around the table.
Could we possibly entertain the idea of allowing our EDC members to take the place of our city staff members at the table so they could engage in the discussion?
Yeah, and pull up some city staff, if you can pull up chairs
Squeeze in some more
behind
chairs,
the EDC members. So staff is available and having, yeah.
Can, absolutely.
So if we can have the EDC members come to the table. Yeah, we'll get all cozy around here.
Everybody in here?
We'll get all cozy.
We have enough. I'll stay, otherwise I can leave. Well, you don't need my water, though.
I got two.
Two chairs.
So we need a consultant from Ellers next to Skip.
All right, excuse me. Let's cram in here, right?
Jason?
You're good. That's all right. Do we have anybody else that needs to be at the table? Do we have everybody?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Bill, you want to come up?
Okay. For everyone who's listening, this item is the development tools policy process and the requirement discussion. Skip Nienhaus, our economic development coordinator, is going to lead us off and introduce our consultant. And then we move through what our policies are today and what you're looking at in terms of the future.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could, just a little timeline as to how we got here. In May, the EDC reviewed TIF 9. They did make a recommendation for the EDA to adopt TIF District 9, and during that discussion, there was an inquiry about whether or not we could require enhanced materials. The EDA did discuss the enhanced materials in June. They did approve TIF District 9, but did not add enhanced materials to the development agreement. In July, at council's request, we had the developer come back to review the materials that were being used in the project. And again, at that point in time, there were no changes to those materials. But during this process, staff did recommend that possibly maybe what Council EDA might want to do is actually review our whole developmental tools policy to see if we should make any changes. With that in mind, in August, you might remember that we held a joint Council EDC training session. We had Ellers, our consultant, walk us through that, kind of gave us a basic TIF 101 discussion. And with that, we are here before you tonight to take a look at the developmental tools policy and see, number one, do you want to make changes to the policy? And number two, if you do, what types of changes you might want to make. In your background report, we supplied you with some comments and recommendations from both Ellers, our financial advisory firm, and Kennedy and Graven, our EDA legal counsel. We also supplied you with a draft policy from Roseville that Ellers has done to give you an example of what a new policy could be. With that being said, Madam Mayor, I'd like to have us engage in the discussion of the questions that were provided to you in your background. And the first basic question, I think, before council and EDC is, do we want to change and/or update our developmental tools policy?
Council members. Yes.
I just, I personally like the Roseville draft. I think that's, you said that that was a draft that they're reviewing, or is that in place already?
They've approved a version that's basically the same as in your packet.
Okay. All right. I thought it was pretty good. It seemed to get to where I thought we were trying to get to.
Well, the other piece that staff had outlined in the background is that instead of having 3 policies for development, TIF, and abatement, is to go into 1 policy. And then I reviewed the Roseville policy to see that it is all incorporated in that one policy. So I agree that we should just have 1 policy that looks at development and the economic development tools that we have in our bucket, if you will, for doing development, redevelopment in a city. And I don't know what, because in reviewing all of it,
Madam Mayor, I believe what I've heard so far is yes to the first 2 questions.
yeah,
Update the policy and make it 1 policy.
yes. The other piece that I don't want to lose is when you look through all of our documents, one of the things that I've liked about our documents and is the application for TIF. When you look at that, and I remember that this was an effort that was, we didn't have the Economic Development Commission, but we had the Economic Development Committee that was comprised of both the Chamber of Commerce and appointments from the city. And Darwin Bolton was the lead chairperson on that. And they did all of this. And what I liked is that it is very transparent. So if anybody asks us, because this is the when people come in and request financial assistance, when you look at that document, I can clearly answer any of those things that people would want to know. What's the total estimate of the project cost? Because there's a worksheet. It tells you what they're working on. It tells you how much it is going to be, the wage, and then all of the subjective analysis that's in there. And then the fundability guidelines. I like that document. Again, why do I like it? Because it gives a complete, transparent approach that people will see. This is how much the private investment is. Here's the EDA public investment, and here's the total investment. So it's so clear to our residents what all of that is. And I believe that we still use that in terms of the fundability guidelines for TIF. I know that we did that during the Heart of the City and any of the other TIF 1 and 2. Yes.
I believe when we had discussion on the application and there's a scoring system in the back, it came out in the discussion that we didn't use the scoring system, that the person applying would fill out the form, but it hadn't been necessarily used as the basis. And I think it says at the top of the form that...
And the fundability guidelines?
That the fundability, it just says that the City of Burnsville and Economic Development Authority will make any decision on term. It doesn't necessarily use the rubric. And I think that was the discussion, too, that the rubric wasn't used.
It doesn't mean that you'll get it.
If I could, Madam Mayor, I would totally agree with you. It does not mean that you would get it. One of the things that was supplied to you in your background was the draft that Roseville uses, which is a little more specific and a little cleaner, and it does not have that points system. One of the preconceived notions from some developers is if they score the points, they're guaranteed it.
No.
Well, that is not true.
No, that's not
I
true.
believe what I'm hearing from you is you want to stay with the application we have now and not remove the part that has all of the scoring points to it.
I would be in favor from the business side perspective that if we're not going to stick by the point system on a regular basis, that we eliminate the points entirely from the application and not have the person applying go through the process of filling out their scorecard when we're not necessarily scoring it at the end anyway.
Because it even is today, we don't, it's not a for sure, but it is a fundability guideline for staff to say, yeah, you can apply. Yeah. But Vince?
I'd like to come back to that, because that's an interesting point. But I wanted to call attention to the Roseville document. And if this exists in our wording already, you can stop me, but a couple of things that jumped out at me were a point about how public financing will not be used to support speculative commercial office or housing projects.
I like that.
Because I believe we've got TIF districts that have been on the books for years and never come to fruition. Is that correct?
What are you talking about?
I mean, we approved TIF in certain areas and then no development has occurred.
Jenny, do we have any TIF districts that, well, we only, the heart of the city is the one piece to finish up Park.
There are one TIF agreement on the Wellington property that we have never made a payout because they haven't done the retail building. They have done the CVS building.
Yeah.
Councilmember Workman may be referring to TIF 8.
Yeah.
Which we created the district. We have yet to certify the district, and we probably will remove that district because we haven't certified it in the last 3 years.
And that is the Soils Correction District?
No, that's an economic development district across from the high school.
Oh, yes, and it was the same. And I see that they've been moving some dirt around there.
That's correct, Madam Mayor. But
So,
that's
and some of that, and I get the market and all of that. It's not, so, yeah, Jenny.
Madam Mayor, I'll also add on, TIF 7 is the MRQ district, and so while that was certified and created back in, 08, I want to say,
That's right.
09?
But we also
have not-
needed to correct the soils.
We have not done any private development agreements yet on that, but we do anticipate, we've met all the qualifying criteria, and you may recall the property values actually went negative for a series of years, so there was no increment to be had even with the existing tax base. Now that that's come up and we've had some other projects that have come in, got their permits, have not asked for assistance, there is increment to be had, and we're looking at how we can use that to support funding for public improvements in the area.
Yeah.
So it's taken a while, just because of the dip in the economy and then construction, so there haven't been any development agreements, Councilmember Workman, on that one, but it's not all for naught. It's just, it's a timing thing, and then now that we have
and there's
public
a market.
improvement projects, so.
Yeah. And I think it's part of what we have done. If I look at TIF 1 and 2, it's being patient with the market.
I guess maybe I'm not exactly certain when we bring this up as far as speculative development goes. The TIF district that was recently created, did that developer have commitment letters for that entire space when applying?
If I could, Madam Mayor.
Skip.
TIF 9, the most recent, that building is under construction, but it is a speculative building. TIF, the difference with TIF 8, same developer, is the agreement was we would create TIF 8 but not certify until they had one user, so as not to start the clock. We're 3 years into this and they do not have the one user. And again, as I said, we probably will need to have that district removed. And we can start over again whenever they get a user.
Sure.
What may help council is the last two districts, the two districts that this council is probably most familiar with, are districts that have been created for one construction project, as opposed to a district such as TIF 1, TIF 2, TIF 6,
Yeah,
which are
the heart of the
multiple
city.
projects. If you do not want to assist a speculative project, you could have that in your policy for a specific development
That's right.
within a district. If the district was larger, you might still want to create that district
Yeah.
for some of the development
Yeah.
that is going to go on. If you had that in your policy that it would not be for speculative, then when TIF 8 came before you and TIF 9 came before you, staff would inform the developer that this would
Yeah.
not be something that that council EDA would be granting because it's a speculative development.
Yep. I'm okay with, because we have always said that we don't fund speculative development. TIF 9? Have we ever done speculative development? Not in TIF 1 and 2.
I suppose TIF
Two
9
and-
was speculative.
Yeah, that is, but 1 and 2 in the heart of the city,
1, 2, and 6 were district with much more parcels in them.
yeah.
I guess the
And
point.
this one was a standalone.
And then
these are
each development,
standalone.
as it came forward,
Yeah.
was then entered into its own agreement within those districts.
Okay. Yeah, Dan K.
Brady's point about not using the scoring system, I would agree. Why do we have it if we're not going to use it? But back to our original, I mean, reading through the Roseville application and their policy, it's a lot cleaner, simpler, to the point, and are you...
Straightforward.
It's a lot
Yeah,
shorter.
I mean, it's just easier read, it's easier to understand. Ours is pretty complex. So is staff not making a recommendation, but asking for some direction that we take our three and consolidate it into one and use this Roseville policy as a model to follow? Because it is good. I mean, I read and understand every aspect of it. It seemed like a really good one. I started reading through ours again, and I got confused where I was and what it was talking about. So I would suggest we move forward with adopting a new policy that is using that one as a model, and our consultants' input to guide through that. And then their application, I thought, was good too. It seemed to ask all the right questions. I don't know if our application, there's aspects of our application that we'd want to maybe integrate and find a combined one that hits all the points that we need, but their application was actually pretty straightforward too, I thought. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think we need to reinvent our wheel and model it after this one.
Clean it up.
I do want us to talk about, so one of the things that you brought up is when TIF 9 came before us, is that you didn't see all of the background material, which is all the fundability guidelines.
I did not.
And I just like, I like the clarity of that, and maybe you can speak to it, Skip, and
If I could, Madam Mayor, while it is not part of the policy, one of staff's recommendations is that we go back to a prior process that we had, and that is after staff and our financial advisor reviews the application, our financial advisor will issue a memo which basically covers why we believe it meets the but-for test, and I think it's even a more clearer document than just giving you an application with a number of responses. This is something that staff and our financial advisor have now delved into, had conversations with the developer, and can produce for you a memo explaining why we believe that this is something that you should consider adopting.
I think that'll get us to where we want to go. I don't know with what everybody, but so the thing is, your first question, do we need to update the tool, the development tool policy? Is there a yes?
Yes.
Consensus?
Yes.
Yes, because I thought, let's look at, and I like what you did for Roseville. But again, there are some things that I liked about what we had done. simply because if a resident asks me about all of these things, I have something to go back and say, yeah, we did the due diligence and here's what it looks like. Okay, so Roseville,
Question, Madam Mayor?
yeah,
Did you and your firm have anything to do with developing the Roseville
yeah,
policy?
they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
We
in
Is
our
that why
background.
it's so good? Because it's really written very well. I mean, I'm reading it and reading ours going, "Pfft, this is really much easier to understand. So if we can understand it, then certainly the developers and staff are going to embrace it a lot easier than ours, I think. So again, I'll go back. There's a reason why it's done well. Now I understand even better why, because you helped them develop it.
I'll say two things about that. We did help them write it, but they also committed a lot of time as a council and put a lot of thought into the things that they wanted to include within that policy. So that helps a lot. And I think what we talked about early on is that you've already put in, I think, a lot of that time with your economic development strategic plan. When we got the same kind of feedback from you through that process that we normally would get from a council to include into a policy. And I think that's part of the recommendation that the staff is making, is that we really draw from that to really inform the desired qualification section of the plan. So that's kind of what the thought was about that, if that seemed, agreeable to the council and EDC.
Good. I agree.
Kara?
Madam Mayor, I'm with you and most everyone else. It appears that we are coming on to consensus on this. While I'm not excited about all the tools that we do implement, I am very excited about transparency and putting things into plain language that everyone can understand. So absolutely update the tools policy. I'm in favor of one policy. Like you, in talking about that memo, I think that's really good. If
how many employees are you going to have, and
Yeah.
how much are you going to pay them?
Yeah, just putting it out clearly why it's recommended. The point system, if it's not.
Take away the
There's
point
not-
system, but answer the questions.
Right, yeah, if it's the, what's the point?
Yeah.
I'm up on all of that. Yeah, the update the application, and if Ellers feels that a guided joint session is something that they would need to complete this task with staff, I'm on board with that. But I will leave that up to both of you.
I'm okay, because here's the we talk about growing the tax base. What we have in our application, it says, what's the projected tax revenue that we're going to get from this development? So when somebody talks to me about that, I says, here, they're going to get TIF, but here's what it's going to gain the city. I know, let's not talk about return on investments, but what's the projected tax revenue? I think that's something that people would like to know. The other is, what's the service impact? What's the type of development? I mean, we know that ourselves. And so take away the point systems, but I think some of this stuff is really good for our residents to understand. If the other thing that, so I'm going to switch over to the Roseville. So one of the things that you also talked about is fiscal disparities coming out of the project.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
The other part that I want to ask about is that you had something in the Roseville policy that has to do with public finance, and it's where there's some bonding, the objective for public finance. So help me understand how you did this, because how is it going to impact our bond rating, or are we just a conduit? Because that isn't spelled out in this. And this is the Roseville policy that I'm looking at, and it's under city objectives for the use of public finance.
Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, I I don't want anything to have a negative impact on our bond rating. And I don't know how that's going to affect our debt. So I have the questions around, you guys have to figure that all out, Jenny and Melanie and Skip. This public finance piece is, I'm
So-
concerned about.
Mayor and council and EDC, so we would generally, these policies are written such that we generally just don't recommend you bond at all for economic
I
development
don't want a
projects.
bond,
Yeah.
so I don't want it in there.
Oh, sure. Well, you know.
I don't want it as, because people will look at that and say, oh, you can bond for us. No,
So we can not include that reference to bonding, certainly.
well, I don't know about my colleagues, but I don't want to use the
No,
city's powers to bond for a development, and
would
then
agree.
it has a negative impact on our bond rating.
Yeah, so two things. One,
And our
agreed,
debt.
yes, you absolutely do not want to do that.
No way.
If, in any time that you do contemplate issuing debt, whether it's for development or any other purpose, we're always going to be looking at what impact that may have on your bond rating, just as your advisor in general,
Yeah.
to make sure that it's not going to have a negative impact.
So why have it
Well,
in there?
the only reason why, and this is again Roseville's policy,
Yeah.
is that there are instances, however rare they might be, where a city actually does decide that it wants to issue debt for some kind of a high priority project.
No.
And I'm thinking of, that may not be you at all, and that's completely fine. But like,
You know,
assembling a redevelopment site, for example, that the private market isn't assembling. It's a reason why
Here's the
cities
thing.
have done that in the past.
we have a AAA bond rating, and one of the things that I am always very cautious about is losing that, because once it's lost, it is hard to get back. And no way, after all of the hard work to get a AAA bond rating, I do not want to lose that rating, because it has a direct impact on our borrowing powers.
Agreed, you do
so-
not want to lose that. Right.
Do not want to lose
Let's
that.
remove bond.
No bond,
We can move on.
yes.
I'm wondering if the last question is becoming more important, because unless we're prepared to go through all of this tonight, which I don't think we are, it would
Yeah.
maybe be
Get back
wise
straight.
for us
So
to have a
come back and
joint.
just do.
Well, let's
what-
schedule a joint meeting and then roll our sleeves up and maybe dig into this
So
collectively.
let's make sure we stay at the policy level and leave the details to staff. So the thing is, yes, we need one policy, and I'd like to see that. But the pieces that I looked through and really is the public finance piece. And I had a conversation with Melanie, and I said, I'm okay with tools, but I'm not going to put the cities no, I'm not going to put the city in jeopardy.
I suggest that we have staff bring back a draft, and then we all sit together and go over it.
Yeah,
Once
on a-
staff
on
has
a-
done
on
their
a-
piece of
And
it,
Ellers,
and then we can
Yeah,
clarify.
but
that.
just.
I think
on a
Otherwise,
pu-
we'll go back and forth for
It
months.
comes
No,
through the EDC
we
too.
we need for staff to take a look. You've gotten some nuggets from us this evening, and see what we can do with it. But boy, that public finance stuff, it's really nice for Roseville. But I'm
I
not
would
going to
just be
lose our
curious
AAA
what-
bond rating over
Excuse
this.
me. I'd just be curious what other cities had bonded for and what sort of high-level priority that they were looking at, that it rose to that. So eliminating from the policy, I understand, maybe not
Yeah,
wanting
yeah.
to
We can take a look
do
at
it,
that, but I'm
just to
telling
see
you right now,
Healthcare infrastructure, something like that. I
I'm
mean, is
not
there
in favor of
something?
bonding for it.
Did you say?
Madam Mayor.
Jenny.
Egan did
well,
Trinity School, a bond, he supported it. It was a-
Oh, I remember when they did that, but boy, that was a tough thing
It was easy,
to do the bonds for Trinity.
yeah. Because it was highly leveraged. I mean, it was only 20 cents on the dollar. So it was 80% cash up, but they did
Yeah, but
bond
here's
it.
the other thing
And there was a
about-
there was a great incentive because the investors got a huge discount when a city bonds it. So
No,
it-
I get that, but at the same time, with Trinity being a 501c3, there was no tax base also,
And they still supported it, so.
yeah. Well, right now,
It's a rare, I agree, it's a rare incident, but there could be an opportunity.
well, yeah, Jenny.
I would just add, I believe in Roseville, they have their own HRA, and they may bond for affordable housing projects as well. That might be, that's what a lot of cities do, bond for affordable housing, so
Yeah.
that's
Well,
probably
we don't-
why
we
that was
don't-
in there.
We don't need to.
I know we don't have an HRA, but just,
Yeah, and
that's,
the other
that's
is that
another
we have a
example
lot
of
of
what a city.
affordable housing in Burnsville. I just finished the whole budget book. I see where our per capita income is. I see everything else that's been in that budget book. And let me tell you, we're okay. We have a lot of affordable housing. Yes.
If I could, Madam Mayor, if Staff and Elders is going to bring back a draft policy, I'd like to go back to that third question. I'm assuming that we will want the draft to be, the basis of the draft be our economic development strategic plan, and we take in all that information that we gathered.
Yeah.
I believe that's what I
We
heard.
adopted it, so we might as well use it. Use the information that came out of that, and it's already adopted. And so protect, you can do public financing, but no bonds. Not at this time. I'm not open to that. But maybe others might be, but
If I could recap, Madam Mayor, I
Yep.
believe the direction is that Staff and Elders will draft a one policy developmental tool for the EDA and EDC to review, and we will draft an application that will remove the scores but have everything else that you need. We'll bring that back to a future work session, again, a joint work session. We can engage in a discussion at that.
Yeah.
And at that point,
Yeah.
you can pick and choose, and you'll be
Yeah.
looking at your draft versus the Roseville draft.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Don't want anything to affect that bond rating.
Don't affect the bond rating.
We will not do that.
Policy with the policy.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Thank you.
Yeah,
This
thank
is
you
very
for
helpful.
all of the work and getting us to continue to improve the way that we do things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got it.
Good job. We should have texted Jenny.
Thank you again.
The next item is the discussion of single-family refuse container screening, and Chris Forsland is
This
our
is not
code
me.
enforcement coordinator. Okay.
You're gonna put it up there? Maybe once or twice.
Yeah, that's what made
You're on deck.
No, this one is, I thought you.
Well, certainly not as glamorous as economic development. The subject of single-family refuse container screening is certainly near and dear to my heart. It is for a couple reasons. First off, it's statistically probably our number one complaint that we hear, and also it's probably the number one violation we have. So people are very passionate in Burnsville about refuse can screening. And it's interesting that we've been looking at, get this going here. Our code, as far as I could go back, has been in the books since probably the mid-1980s. It may go back even farther, I'm not sure. And nearly every city has something that talks about this. But one of the things we looked at was exactly what other cities are doing and some of the obstacles that people encounter for not complying. And I've got a few just pictures here that we see when we're in the field that we hear why people can't screen for perhaps is maybe the lay of their property is such, they got to pull it uphill. They have to, or they got way too many cans for some reason. We encounter a lot of these things in the field, and staff have to make some staff judgments a lot of times on what to do. Is it in compliance or not, and what can they do? We run into things like weather, for example, which will be coming up. We hear quite often that, well, the snow's in the way. We can't put it behind the house, we can't put it inside. Or it's combined with other violations that we see. In any case, this is a daily occurrence that we have, and to not say it's exciting, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of these calls, and I try to answer everybody's questions. We certainly try to work with everybody to find common solutions to these issues. So what we thought we'd take a look at tonight for discussion is a little bit, what some of the screening options have been in the past. Some light lattice work, so people can't see it from the road. Our code does require 100% screening visible either from adjacent properties or from the storefront or the street fronts, behind a solid wall, which we see, and as well as some vegetation being used, which is, we have the occasional Charlie Brown tree that's covering it up, and people want to call that screening. We try to work with people, but as you can see, the whole point of this is we got a variety of conditions here that affect our ability to enforce this code. Taking a brief look at our market cities, a little bit what they have done is they have all got at least some language in the
For storage location.
for storage locations, whether it be as I would say simple as Coon Rapids, which would be behind the existing front yard setback, all the way to completely screened from view, like Brooklyn Parks, and various points in between. So there's a variety of different things that can be done, or that other cities require, I should say, that we may want to consider. Now I'm losing my voice here. But almost all of them have something regarding where the cans can be stored, as well as what the screening materials would be. So all over the place on screening materials. Some of the issues, again, residential screening is number one, and it's the number one complaint. Very difficult to achieve complete screening in a lot of respects. Thank you. Weather and seasonal conditions can contribute, and we get a lot of owner complaints. Well, why can't I put it in the garage? Well, it smells. Understood. And buffer screening can be very loosely interpreted. So it kind of gives us some tough decisions that we have to make sometimes to find solutions. So a bigger question today is, do we need to get additional information on this? And would council like to go forward with changing the existing code?
So what you missed telling everybody is that when we started this back in 2014, there were 406 violations. And then now in 2019, you only have 135. And because of the things that you do with regard to just being kind and just letting people know, there has been some effects, positive effects. And I think looking at where we were and where we are today, what are the things that we can do better?
We've made a concerted effort, because we know this is a time constraint on staff. It's certainly a time on resources to let people know that this is not what the code says, and it's not the standard that historically the city's lived up to. And so the response generally, especially, we still get people that don't know about it. And those may be newcomers coming into the city, or maybe folks that, well, I've lived here 50 years and nobody's ever said anything about it before. So
Yeah, but they might have a new neighbor that says, I like to make sure that the price of my home, continues to improve.
Right, and you certainly can't miss those, brightly colored carts that are sitting out there. So it's something that people readily identify as well. So it is a big focus, and as I mentioned earlier, people are very passionate about this. And I'm amazed that, some of the discussions I've had with folks about how they feel about this.
Kara.
thank you very much, and thank you so much for getting the side-by-side on what comparable cities do. That's really helpful, especially dividing it between where do you put it versus screening, because those are two different things, definitely.
Completely.
Does council wish to change the existing code? My preference is yes, that we do change the existing code. I do know that this takes up quite a bit of your staff time, and, you know, the focus of your staff. I mean, really, so when you guys are doing code enforcement, you guys are really focusing on safety issues, like things that can become a problem for people.
We try to triage.
Yeah, absolutely. And instead, we have you dealing with, is this 100% screened or not 100% screened? And I would like to have this much easier and clarified, similar to how we were doing with business. Since we looked at business and we changed code for business, we should be looking at residential and changing that for residential as well, and making that much easier to comply with and clearer. Maybe focusing more on where is the garbage can rather than what is the screening material. Is it 100% screened? Can vegetation be used as a screen? That type of thing, where you guys are having to really take a lot of time and work with people on. So that is my view on this. But
Dan?
Well, as I drive around our city, I can point out lots of violations around the city of our current code. And I guess for me, if you're not leaving it in the street where we bring it every Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, and you're bringing it up and put it in front of your garage or on the side of your house, you're not on the street itself as people are driving down the street, and I think that's more important than whether it sits right outside my garage and I can just throw the trash in there and not have the mice in my garage at the same time. I've never liked the fact that we've tell people to put it in their garage, because I can tell you as I get around, there are mice in a lot of these garages because garbage is in those garages. It attracts the critters as much as people try and keep them out. It does attract critters to the house itself.
Right.
So to me, I can see our ordinance changing that they have to have it up by the house or on the side of the house, but but off the street after their collection day is done.
So I looked at all of these storage locations from other cities. You know, you have Lakeville that says within the principal structure or within an accessory enclosure. So they don't fool around with screening, period. You put it primary structure.
Remove from plain view is when
Yeah.
we of
When
course
you
had to
look at
condense
every
these.
one, it's removed from plain view. They don't deal with the screening. So, you know, Minnetonka says out of public view except on the day of collection. So maybe out of the public view if you're driving down the street, it's on the side of the house or in the back of the house or wherever. But it's very clear. They don't deal with the screening part. It's just, Plymouth says, at or near the back door or near the garage of a building or at the rear of the property if there is any alley.
I thought
We
that
don't
was
have any alley.
creative.
Huh?
I thought that was creative.
Yeah.
Big if.
So you look at it, every one of our market cities don't deal with screening like we do. They're all saying, just get it out of eyesight. And I think the big thing is that you have a lot of conflicts out there because you're trying to determine, is it screened appropriately? You just had one and you called it a Charlie Brown tree that is screening.
Exactly.
So get out of the screening business and just tell them to put it inside the garage or, like Lakeville says, within a principal structure or within an accessory enclosure. Make it simple. So
So,
I know that we went with screening to be flexible, but the flexibility is creating more problems.
I'm gonna throw something out there.
Sure.
Personally, I'm not concerned about if it's inside of a principal structure or accessory dwelling. If it's outside, and this is just my preference, it should be at or behind the property line. And I like the idea of it directly abutting a principal or structure or accessory structure. So if you're gonna keep it on the side of your house, you gotta keep it kind of tucked
Yeah.
as close to the side of the house as you can. When my neighbor Doug found out I was on the planning commission, that one of the first things he said to me was that he got I always call him a nastygram, and that's probably not fair. But he got a letter,
information letter.
a suggestion,
Friendly reminder.
because his garage kind of butts out past his home, and so he keeps it next to his house, but kind of behind his garage. So you really couldn't see it unless you hit it at the perfect angle. And somebody saw it, and I look out my bedroom door at it, or I'm sorry, my bedroom window every morning at it, and it doesn't really bother me. But I kind of envision that as being just fine. So.
On the side of the house.
Ma'am, I guess my suggestion would be at or behind the front of the structure.
Yeah.
And then if you could put in abutting the principal
Yeah.
structure, accessory structure, I would be more than
But not in
comfortable.
the front of the house, but on the side. I'm okay with the side of the house,
That's mine.
but it's not where people just look at it right away. Kara?
If I can ask a question, so in one of the screens you showed a house, and we have, I mean, Burnsville is thankfully not just like pancake flat, like we have nice
We got
rolling
hills.
areas.
We
Yeah.
have lots of hills.
So you showed one of the houses where the cans were pulled up, but like they have that driveway that's just like that, and then it was
This
right.
one.
Yes. So, but some of them have it where like that whole front, they're up. So getting to the side of a yard, how would that be for them? Like, because you see all these houses, you're out there all the time. So how would
This
that
is
work for them?
specifically why I wanted to put this one in here. Just
Yeah.
by design, there's some inherent difficulties with people complying with some of this as well. We don't have a one-size-fit-all, well, we do, kind of, but there's situations where we have to use best judgment as well. And back to, putting it behind the face of the house, I look at something like this as being a difficulty.
Well, and if you look at a duplex or a townhouse, twin home, you're dragging it across your yard then because if your garage is this shared point of the twin home, then that doesn't make a lot of sense either. So
there is no side.
You know, when you look at some of the duplexes, in your neighborhood,
Yep.
they put them on the side, and you can't see
Not all
them.
of them have a side. Some
Huh?
are fenced in, and it's hard to even
Yeah,
get
and you don't,
to the
and you
side of
don't.
the house.
I don't see a lot of those garbage containers in the front.
They're there.
Oh, they're, well. When you're, so the duplexes that are on the Parkway, before you get to your neighborhood,
This is why I have a cat.
I don't see garbage cans when I go by, except for,
Madam Mayor, you don't notice when you're on the Parkway, because I think as the homes back up to it, that's why I don't notice it. You have to actually go down the street to get to the front, and that's what we enforce, is from the front of the street.
Dakota and James and those
Exactly.
streets.
I don't notice them either, but there's fences and vegetation
yeah,
in their
there's a
backyards.
lot of fencing. Yeah.
We have to make sometimes unpopular decisions based on what we're seeing.
No.
And really pick our battles on what we consider, if we were viewing from the street, exactly what, if it constitutes a violation. Very subjective sometimes.
Yeah, you liked the Plymouth one, because you thought it was creative.
I like creativity. And,
So-
if it addresses some of the.
Yeah, it says near the back door, and Or near the garage. Yeah.
Plymouth was one that stood out to me as well.
What was it, Mitch?
When I went
Yeah.
through the list, Plymouth was also the one that I noticed.
So, if I may
Yeah,
ask a
Kara.
clarifying on Plymouth, so at or near the back door, which I get, or near the garage of the building,
Yeah.
or at the rear of the property if
Yeah.
there is an alleyway. So the in or near the garage of the building, that is them pulling that up to, just like in that photo with the steep home, it's just like that, right? That's what they would be able to do.
I guess I would look at it that way.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a safety thing. I like it. We're not having them in the streets because
Yeah.
we don't want them just hanging out in the street, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I actually like that.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking at too, is, Lakeville just says,
That helps for some of those that have.
put it in a principal structure or within an accessory enclosure. There's only two ways. Plymouth said, I think if they put it in the back, they can drag it out to the street if that's it. The other one was, Minnetonka just says, just get it out of the public's view, except on the day of collection.
They also have 5-car garages in Minnetonka.
So,
Garbage can stall.
They have a dedicated
let me
stall
ask
for
you
the
this,
garbage.
are you all in agreement about the Plymouth?
I like Plymouths.
Like Plymouth.
That's easy, and we get out of the screening business.
Does that work for you?
I think it's.
Madam Mayor,
Jenny?
members of the council, I don't, and if I can, Councilmember Workman, it doesn't matter what works for us, right?
But I appreciate your opinion.
Well, it's your policy, and
Yeah.
this is a policy discussion, and it is, I believe, a very controversial one, and you are going to get phone calls. Staff is going to be
Both directions.
both directions,
Yeah.
and.
Already have.
So, with that, kind of leads to the next question, because I think some of the changes that you're making, some people are really going to like, and some people are really going to not like. And so, taking away any screening requirement, I think, is probably the biggest one, moreover, location. So the question to you, if there's a hearing consensus that you want to change this, and certainly you are the policymakers, we will do that. But is there anything with community engagement that you would like us to do specifically? We can put stuff on the website, we can take a survey. The public hearing will be at the Planning Commission. If you know what you want to do already, you know what you want to do already. So we just ask the question as your staff, what your expectation is for public outreach on this.
Okay, I would like the real estate community to weigh in on this.
I'll weigh in.
Thank you. In residential housing, of
You're the
course.
liaison.
You, but also others, to weigh in on it, because they're the ones out there selling houses, and what is it that they see? And what is it that they're, what are their thoughts? Yeah.
I would say that we've had some of these ordinances in place so long that people that have screening will continue to use the screening area. They built it, that's where their trash cans are, they're not gonna suddenly just move it out to another part of their house, they're gonna use this. And it helps take care of some of the people, and several do have hardships, as to where they put that garbage, and that it just takes care of that problem as well.
So you're saying just do some screening, so
The
grandfather in
the
the
ones that are
screening?
screening, they're gonna continue to use the screening, we're not gonna tell them to take it down.
So
They'll
what
do
I-
that, and the ones that can't get it to the side of their house because of whatever problems, or that can get taken care of. Now they can put it in front of their garage and not worry about having to pull their car in. Now put the garbage behind them, oh, no, take the garbage out, pull my car out, now let's put the garbage back in the garage again, which happens in some of these homes. It takes care of that
We
problem.
can grandfather and screen. Yeah, Vince?
I don't want to move the dial backwards, but to Jenny's question, would it be a lot of effort if we were to do some type of community survey, engage
I like
a
that
way
because that's how
to
we do things.
get the public involved and see if there is a hard preference one way or the other?
If I,
Kara?
Okay, so as we saw with the sustainability survey,
195.
it's hard to find when we do these things. So I like that. I mean, this is on trail that we have to hold a public hearing. And people will come, like, because people will hear about that and they will come and they will engage at that public hearing. And we can ask them questions. They can ask staff questions. Personally, I think on this particular issue, that's a better way to engage because it needs to be a discussion rather than 10 people were able to find the survey that was buried on our website. And I'm not saying anything bad to staff. I'm just,
There's effort in making sure everyone sees it. I
so,
understand that.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we really need a discussion.
Commissioner, you had a thought.
Can I ask a question? As a
Sure,
citizen-
absolutely.
As a citizen of Burnsville? So
Yeah.
This is a reason I'm here.
Yeah.
And this is what got me all sparked up to come to local politics stuff, is getting a violation letter.
Yeah.
If I could, if you had the commissioner come up here.
Yeah, and then give your name so that people who are watching us know who you are and your address.
Chris Claviter, 500 Interlochen Road. The reason I'm here is because I got a letter from the city about being in violation of the trash can. So did several other people in our neighborhood, and I don't know if it's because I saw the guy driving up and doing it, and I actually approached him, asking what he was doing, because he was in an unmarked Prius, and it looked really suspicious, driving up to a house, looking, writing stuff down, driving up. So I asked him what he was doing, and he was a bit apprehensive to answer. The whole thing tied together to feel, I talked to the people in my neighborhood about if they got the letter too, knocked on some doors, talked to them when I saw them out. And the whole thing, to everyone who got a violation letter, the overwhelming feeling was it was oppressive. You have somebody coming, watching what you're doing on your property, where you live, the property you paid for in America, telling you that you're not really doing much wrong, but we're still going to come by and just monitor little details about you with a visible trash can, not visible. Because everybody who had one had it on the side of their house, but was visible. And that was the problem, where it felt like I'm not really doing much wrong. Why are you nitpicking and wrecking my day? When you look at these, upon talking to more people, some people did say that it affects property values, they felt. I have yet to find a study that says it affects property value. If we go to discussion on this, I believe that number needs to, that some kind of data in that way needs to be there to help relax the argument, because otherwise you're speculatively arguing between two sides. The sides who don't want people nitpicking and telling them what to do versus the side that says it's going to affect their dollars. The side that affects their dollars so far hasn't come up with a presentation of to what degree and what level. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but that's just my but I think that to keep the arguments low and keep the heat down, we need to have data presented there. Does that make sense?
Good.
It's
And the other thing that I'm going to also say to our staff, be open and transparent. If you're out and about and you're doing a community survey, say your name, who you are, and what you're doing.
Normally we do that, but when people come up on a car, we get concerned for safety reasons as well, because we've had people verbally,
Physically.
go after staff in the streets. As far as all our vehicles are marked,
Yeah.
I'm kind of scratching my head on that one.
Well, it might have been marked in the back very small, but there's no side
Well, it's all
marking.
on the sides.
This one had no side marking on it. A silver Prius with no side marking, because that's the reason I went up and asked. This is several years ago. I don't know if things have changed or whatever, but
Okay, when you go out here, you see all of our vehicles.
I've seen them. Yeah, and they're all marked. I do. I'm not disagreeing with you.
They all have the city logo on them.
Yep, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying when and maybe at the time I missed a huge logo or something like that, because either way it was very odd to have somebody driving up house to house to house and just writing things down. It felt intrusive, and that's one of the arguments you're going to get from the people, is that it feels intrusive to have these people monitoring little issues like this.
Thank you for the information, Chris.
Sure.
And so for staff,
Thank you for your time.
making sure that to people. And so, two pieces. One is the community engagement. If we're going to have a community engagement, one of the things, because I agree we have a public hearing.
Discussion.
But Melanie and Jenny, I think maybe having Marty put out information about that this is coming in on Facebook and all of our channels, so more people understand what we're doing, so it's more transparent, people can show up. And if they have an opinion and they want to give an opinion, give them the opportunity of where to send an email with all of that, if they're not going to make it. But I want to make sure that people's voices are heard. And the other is that I do, and believe me, I understand the challenges that staff have when there are angry residents, because I've seen it come up to a staff member, and then there's a lot of yelling. And you can feel very vulnerable and afraid for your safety. So I get that. But let's find a better way for everybody. I'm going to go to Melanie, and then I'll come to you. Yeah.
No, Madam Mayor, I was just, perhaps there's further discussion. I was going to try to capture what I think staff heard, but.
Yeah. Okay, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to, when we do this, make it very clear, we're not talking about leaving garbage cans on the streets.
Exactly.
We don't want everyone thinking,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
they can leave it wherever they want anymore. That's not what we're talking about, and we need to make that clear.
Yeah. And so when we put out, it's, is it inside, on the side of the house, or screened? And also, if we have screening in place, we can grandfather those screening, if that's something we can do. Melanie?
Even put that proposed. Yeah,
You
I
made a
wouldn't
point of
suggest that
that
we make
in the
any
staff
changes to eliminate the screening
Yeah.
provision.
Oh, God, no.
No.
We
Take
can even put the
Take it down. It really
proposed
looks nice.
Yeah,
Plymouth, since that's kind of what we're looking at.
yeah.
Cans.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and Council, I mean, I'm hearing that you like the Plymouth language, and I think we certainly can work with that and get the word out and get the process going, so.
Yeah,
I don't have
that's
any
exactly
concerns
it.
with that.
And then the
Absolutely.
other piece is, I'm understanding with consensus, if people have screening, grandfather the screening in.
Yeah, we won't eliminate.
We-
They can
we're not-
absolutely do that.
They can do that if they
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
They can still use it.
Oh, of course. Yeah, people should still be
Yeah.
able to screen.
Jenny?
Madam Mayor, just a couple of comments. We'll have the city attorney, of course, review the language that we
Yes.
come up with. Some of this may be vague, and so we just want to be clear in what's allowed or not
Absolutely.
allowed.
Yeah.
And so we'll just make sure that gets taken care of. We have been challenged before on certain things, so we want to make sure that we have a solid ordinance. And then regarding the grandfathering, there's no procedural thing or ordinance thing that needs
Yeah.
to be done to do that.
They can still
It's not
use it.
illegal for someone to have lattice up or anything like that, so
Yeah.
that'll just stay.
Because there was a lattice there and you
They want to screen it.
didn't
It's
see
not
it.
required.
It was behind a screen.
Okay. Last thing, if I can, is
Yeah.
timing. I'm thinking this might be something we do and get started in January. So I
That's
don't know what
fine.
your expectations are for
It's not
timeline, but we're
urgent.
pretty busy right now, so,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not urgent. You've got a lot of things.
Okay.
We just saw Melanie's
1,500
report with all of your, you're busy with roofs and permits.
A lot.
Yeah, so, Jenny,
Yeah, but if we're
you have
directing this
all
to
the
be
information you
relaxed,
need?
we don't want to
Yes.
enforce from here on.
okay, and in terms of expectations, council, you all understand this isn't going to come until next year. Okay? Dan, next year. They've got all of
Yep,
this
January,
other-
right?
Yeah.
My
They're
point
busy.
was in enforcement. From this day forward, we shouldn't be enforcing something that we've essentially verbally said we're going to remove.
Can you do that with the code still?
Well, Madam Mayor
Yeah.
and Council, what I suggested to Councilmember Keeley was that we are already reprioritizing some of our staff resources to attend to the backlog and the building permit. So certainly, this isn't a high priority code enforcement issue for us. I mean, it's a common one, but it's not. We prioritize on life safety issues.
But also respond to the emails and phone calls about this, please. To ignore what our residents are also, because if you guys ignore, guess who gets the email?
We don't
And then
ignore
guess
them.
who I send it
Forward
back
there.
into?
Well, Madam Mayor, we certainly, in Council, we certainly wouldn't ignore the public when they
No,
reach out to us.
yeah, but,
We get a lot of feedback.
yeah, yes,
I bet you do.
yeah, okay.
That was
But we do, but do so respond. Okay. Anything else for staff on this item? And Jenny and Melanie, and you have it. Okay, we
Thank
move
you.
forward, not expecting anything until next year. The next item is the food truck ordinance. Regina Dean, our redevelopment coordinator. Regina.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I think most of you were here in August when the item of food trucks was brought up during Roundtable. Mayor, you were absent from that meeting.
Yeah, but I know all about it.
The direction from council was to essentially relax our current standards for food trucks, and basically the direction was to allow food trucks or be
In
more
the heart of
flexible.
the city.
To be more flexible, to check in, to see what other cities are doing, but to not conduct any additional public outreach, basically move this ordinance forward. So I'll go ahead and start with our current regulations. So currently, we consider food trucks or mobile food vendors as transient merchants. So we have in our section of Title III of our city code, we talk about transient merchants, peddlers, and solicitors. So it falls under that category. We do require that food trucks, peddlers, solicitors, transient merchants obtain a license from our police department. That license is valid for 1 year. What that pays for is staff recovery time as well as background checks to conduct on those individuals or companies. We do allow food trucks in many areas of our city now, but under certain very specific requirements. So we do allow food trucks, mobile food vendors within heart of the city in designated areas, designated streets where we have public parking within the street right of way. It's outlined in the city code, those specific streets. We also allow food trucks within our parks. So any one of our city parks, through our policy, as long as they meet the specific criteria and obtain a private, I would say it's a public permit, but essentially it's private use within our public parks. As long as they follow that policy and we sign off, they pay the required fee, it would be allowed in our parks. We do allow mobile food vending or food trucks within our industrial, business, and mixed zoning districts if a conditional use permit is approved, or perhaps a planning and development for that specific type of use. So commercial business needs to go through that application process, a 60 to 90-day process, get that specific approval. We also allow food trucks, mobile food vendors in our industrial and commercial zoning districts if it's for a private event. So I'm a corporation, I have a lot of employees, it's certainly an attractor to, maybe we don't have a cafeteria, but we invite food trucks to daily or weekly or as a fun event. And then we do allow exemptions for things like the Boy Scouts or having a Von Hansen's hot dog sale. Other charitable organizations and religious institutions can have food trucks under this provision of the code. So those are our current regulations. We did take an opportunity to survey our market cities. It's, a quick email to city staff, what do you do? Easily plot that on a chart. And here's the range. So for a one-day event, what we saw was $0 to $50 per event. Or an annual permit range of $50 to $635 for an annual permit. So, and kind of everything in between. Those market cities, most of them I would say would allow food trucks for industrial, office, or private events, similar to what we do now.
Just like we do.
Yep, correct. And then a few of them allow them in all zoning districts. And then generally, food trucks or mobile food vending would be prohibited in a single-family residential zoning district unless you're having a private event like a wedding, block party, something of that nature. So staff did take the opportunity to take a look at our current code and how we can make it more flexible. In your packets was a red line version affecting 3 different chapters of Title III. In summary, what we propose as a staff would be to clarify that mobile food vending or mobile vending food trucks are not a peddler, solicitor, or transient merchant. So we would still have that in place for the people knocking on your door saying, you need a new roof, or would you like my window washing service, or would you like to buy these magazines? Kind of that people going onto an individual's property and asking. So that would still be in place. However, we would not consider food trucks under that umbrella. We propose to modify references to right-of-way only. So one of the chapters speaks to mobile food vending, in parentheses says in right-of-way only. So we want to make sure that we don't, that we provide clarification, that we basically would allow food trucks or mobile food vending on private property in all zoning districts. So tweaking of the language to assist with that. And then another idea that emerged was to change mobile food vending licenses from 1 year to 3 years. So this would be specific to your food trucks, to your mobile food vendors. That license, that background check fee would be $100 still, but would be for 3 years instead of 1 year as it is today. We received a lot of, through the Party on the Plaza, the Back to the 80s food event, a lot of complaints, concerns, people saying we're not getting a return on our investment. We're probably not going to return next time or next year. So we saw this as a way to be more flexible and to regain some of those vendors. So we do have a number of questions for you to consider. And I'll just go through them, Mayor, if I may.
Sure,
So,
please.
number one, after providing this information and after a couple of months have gone by, do you still, or do you believe that there should be any additional outreach or study needed? And if so, who should we include in that outreach or study?
Dan, Kay?
As the requester of this item, I sat in a chamber public policy meeting about a month ago, actually. And Dan McElroy, who used to run the Hospitality Association, I believe, State
Yeah,
Hospitality,
the state.
asked if stakeholders involved in this, not only the food truck, but also the restaurants in the area, would be part of the process to be heard and bring out any concerns. And I said, you know, we certainly can, but we were on a track of essentially just making changes to our ordinance and moving forward. And both he and others at that meeting expressed a concern for us just sort of running through it without involving the stakeholders. So I would ask the council to step back and let's involve some folks and make sure we do this right and involve the stakeholders, because we have time. There's really no rush. The next season is next spring, summer, and fall, and pardon?
April, May.
April, May. So we have some time. I'd like to make sure that we follow a process that involves people. And I mean, I like the suggestions that staff has made. I mean, these are all good. I would say yes. I think it's important for us to recognize everyone who could be affected by this. I think it's all in a positive way, because what we're doing and what drove me to bring this up is watching the demographic shifts in the money spent by centennials and millennials on food, going out, eating out. It's dramatically higher than any historical demographic from 18 to 35. And that's driving the restaurant industry as a whole, but it may not be a sit-down restaurant. It's fast food, it's quick food, it's quick serve, or what do you call it, like Culver's.
Fast casual.
Fast casual. And food trucks are part of that, and we all are familiar with the explosive growth that they're having across the country. So I think we're responding by being more flexible, by giving the market what it needs to continue to encourage that growth and give people what they're looking for. But along the way, it's important to get stakeholder input and listen to their concerns and make sure everybody's on board with what we do going forward.
And I agree. One of the things that we do in Burnsville is being open and transparent and having people be inclusive in the discussion as we make our decisions on all of these ordinances. The other thing is that we need to be very cognizant about our brick and mortar, and that they continue to be viable. So their voices need to be heard. They should be at the table, and they should understand what is going on and have a voice. And so I like that direction, and we have time, but be inclusive. All affected parties should have a voice in going forward, just like we do with signs, just like we do with anything else, is to be open and transparent.
Just a quick follow-up before, and I don't have anything more to say. I'm a big free market fan, and I think when we govern business or preclude them from doing business, because we're trying to protect another business, that's bad government. So I want to have the discussion. I want them at the table to talk about it.
Not just protecting them.
But I also believe that when the market is saying, this is what we want, we shouldn't be saying, well, you can't do it there and you can't do it there because we're trying to protect an existing business. That's not something I support.
Yeah.
So,
Kara?
So I wanted to ask, did they articulate what their concern was?
we didn't get into any, I guess, level of detail that I would want to represent today, but we do have our chamber president here, if she would like to comment.
Yeah. Jennifer, you want to come to the table? Yes.
Jennifer Harmony,
Yeah.
Burnsville Chamber, 1220 Bluebill Bay Road, residence. I think the concern was transparency.
Yeah, transparency.
I think the Public Policy Committee, the Chamber in general, is very supportive of the direction of the council, whether it's screening of garbage cans or loosening of regulation that frees up the market. I think there's positive feeling about that. It's just transparency of the process. So I think the questions that came up were things like, so food service, whether it's brick and mortar or in a food truck or other venue, is a super thin margin operation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think it's great that the city is looking at the fees and making sure that the fees are in line, but also making sure that the fees are in line with the actual staff time and things associated with the implementation of it. And so making sure that those fees are fair and reasonable and covering your costs. Because on the flip side, you do have bricks and mortar restaurants that are taxpayers that cover the staff time and things like that. And so it's just, I think there were not red flags. There were not things like, we don't think it should be expanded. We don't think this is a good idea. It was simply transparency. Food truck people should be at the table. Restaurants should be at the table. And then you're elected to make those decisions. So, yeah,
And
we
Jennifer?
appreciate the review of the issue. I think it's a good one.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard from people. They want transparency and they want to have a voice. Yeah.
I agree there should be transparency in all of this. I will say that food trucks are something that is here to stay.
Yeah.
Many food trucks have gone to
Nobody
brick
is-
and mortar. Many bricks and mortars actually own food trucks as well, so
Exactly.
they're
It's a
out
good
there
thing.
putting their trucks in other
Nobody's
areas.
It's a great
And
thing for our
just so you
community.
understand, food trucks pay taxes too. They collect a sales tax. I know 3 of them that actually live here in Burnsville that have food trucks. So, I mean, there's our own residents are here paying taxes, so I don't think that's the issue here.
I know.
The issue is a private property owner who owns a property, if they want to have a food truck on it, they should be able to do that. That's what it really comes down to. And we shouldn't be legislating somehow that, no, you can't have it on your property, but a guy 2 blocks down the street can, because they're out of this zone or something like that.
No.
That should not happen.
It's
And I do have another question. Are the trucks that are in these areas right now in our city, are all those businesses got CUP so they could be there?
What trucks?
The food trucks?
We have food trucks all over Burnsville. Have there been CUPs on every one of those food trucks?
I'm not aware. I don't know.
I was shocked when I heard that had to get a CUP to even be in an area. That makes no sense to me.
That's a pretty high threshold to
Yeah, you think?
just be able to do business there.
Okay.
I mean, I
these are
appreciate the
all-
conversation, but I gotta say again, I agree with Dan. This isn't about protecting the
No.
bricks and mortars and this
No,
and that.
it's about
And we can't approach
transparency.
it that way, because
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's about transparency and everybody having a voice.
I understand that.
Yeah, Kara?
And I agree. It's not like we're doing this in the middle of the night. We're being recorded. This is being streamed. This is transparency. Having a public meeting, public hearing, that also is transparency. And generally speaking, when we do these types of things, that's the process we go through is, you know, this comes up, it comes before work session, we discuss, you know, kind of a consensus on a direction we want to go, staff works with it, it goes in front of planning commission, there's a public hearing. There is a process. So my question is, are we asking that an additional step be placed in there in addition to our normal process?
So if I may answer, the changes that we're proposing in the draft only will go to city council because they're entitled.
So they would not
III,
go to a public hearing?
They would not.
Should go to a
planning
public
commission.
hearing, is my opinion.
The planning commission would not be
They
the
won't-
recommending
they don't see
body.
it.
Not land use.
This should have a
Can't we have a
public
public
hearing.
hearing at council?
This should have a public hearing.
Yeah, open up
With
the
council.
microphone and let anybody talk that wants to talk.
Yeah,
Council
We
can
know how to
host a
do that.
public
I agree.
hearing or meeting.
Is that, can we can do that? Yes?
You can do whatever you want. We can have a public
Yeah,
hearing.
we can have a public hearing in.
do whatever we want.
in the
We have
council.
that. We have the,
Damper on
What-
that one.
So the thing is, from a statute perspective, we don't call it a public hearing, but we have public input.
Fantastic.
We can do public input because we don't do a public hearing on these kinds of
There we
things. But we can say we will open up for public input.
I love that. That would be fantastic, I think.
Yeah.
But as for me, I like what the staff has proposed. I think that's absolutely reasonable. So, yeah, if we have that come back before council and have public input rather than a public hearing.
right.
I am very, very in favor of that.
Everybody?
I'm very, very happy that you.
I just
Oh,
need
sorry.
some clarification on a few points. Dan touched on it. So for the conditional use permit, that's not going to be applicable because that really only pertains to transient merchants, correct?
That's correct. That's how it's
Yeah.
spelled out in
Correct.
Title
That's how
10
we'll take
that out.
zoning. And so
Take this away from the transient then.
a peddler or transient merchant would still have to go through a CUP process if they were to be located on private property in those zoning districts.
Okay. And then
I'm going to go to Jenny.
I would just add, council, think of the fireworks tents. Those
Yeah.
are things that they're there on a more day-to-day, seasonal basis.
Semi-permanent.
Those have CUPs for them.
city parks,
Yeah, you can have a food truck in city parks.
would they still need to be charged the food truck fee and the park user fee? And do we know what that fee
Yeah.
schedule looks like?
Melanie?
I don't know what this, Madam Mayor and Council, I don't know what the fee schedule is off the top of my head. I don't know if our planning staff does.
I don't know for park use specific, no. They would still, what Parks does now is they would require a background check for food trucks entering, like for a party on the plaza, for example,
And
for
I
the Back to the
understand the
80s
background check with
event.
children.
The background checks were done, were paid for and done.
And I think another component of that, it's very common to pay for use of public property. It is a private entity that is charging the public for use. So it is very common for that use to be charged.
The background on that question is of what if you had a soccer tournament at River Hills Park and they wanted to call a food truck to come and serve the crowd. So then that food truck would pay the food truck fee and then the park use fee. But that soccer tournament probably also paid that park use fee. So it's a very specific scenario. But, you know, I just put together a social gathering at a park with a food truck. Are you doubling your park use fee with a food truck and then the group that's also renting?
Madam Mayor
why
and
don't we-
council members,
yeah.
we'd have to do a little bit of
Yeah, why don't
looking
we
into that
have
one.
staff now
I don't
that
think
you-
we typically get in the habit of, double charging, but we
Yeah.
will certainly get back to
It's
you
just-
on that.
Well, someone would have a
Good point.
license
That's
to
a very
be,
good
to
point.
be a food truck vendor in the city. That's their license.
Yes.
So,
But then they're being charged to go into a parking lot to serve in that
I think that's
area.
where staff will do some research and come back to us.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have any really specific
Dan
questions
G?
like the ones I just.
Oh, no, I just have my, sitting here. Sorry.
Jenny,
I
well,
usually
when you have your hand and a pen up, I'm thinking
Well,
you
you
want
probably
me to
covered this,
give.
but what is that fee for? And
Which
the-
fee?
I may have just missed it. The initial, the license to be in the city.
The license fee pays for the background check, the actual
The
going
actual
into the
background check?
state system or
Okay.
police department system
Right.
that they have access to, and then also cost recovery for the staff time to do that. So for some people, it might be a simple one state check. For people that have changed names over the years, moved states over the years, that might actually not cover the whole
So are we looking
amount.
for criminal record, or what are we? And
Yes.
would a criminal record preclude someone from getting a license because they have
Why
they were in
don't
jail once
we-
and now they're out and they have a food truck?
Melanie?
Madam Mayor and Council, I'm not an attorney, so I won't pretend to be one, but in my experience, we usually look at the depth and the breadth and the scope of the violation, and there's the freshness.
So we would work that through our attorney.
I mean, a simple violation in your past wouldn't be an automatic disqualifier, I would suggest.
I know
We would
people,
certainly look
people
into
try and get a fresh start, and sometimes
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
let them.
Yeah.
And so
No,
I
no.
want to know why.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question, but I think
Yeah.
Jenny's raising her
Jenny?
hand.
I was just gonna wrap up the discussion after you're done, just so
Yeah.
we have clear direction, so.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure we're walking away here and meeting your expectations. And so there is consensus to change the ordinance.
Yeah.
There's consensus to put this on a regular council meeting agenda, you
For
can call
public
for
input.
public input as part of that. So we won't do any special meetings or outreach with anyone, but we will let them know about the opportunity to speak before you.
And I think it would be
Okay.
really good, again, to put it on all of our channels. So
Certainly.
a wide breadth of people know. And also, did
Sheila.
Jennifer leave?
Yeah.
To put it
Chamber
on
would-
the public policy agenda so that people know that we've addressed it and we have a pathway forward so that they can do that. Dan
I
Kay?
just want to reiterate by not reaching out to anybody, so we're not going to notify the food trucks or the restaurants in Burnsville of this.
No, we are, so
We
to
are.
come to the
When you
public
said not
input.
reach out to any specific people or entities, that's the one I would reach out to specifically to make sure all the restaurants and food trucks that we know of in our city are aware of this, rather than having them just catch it by
Sure.
chance through the chamber
Sure,
or
yeah.
social media. Do we have a mechanism for reaching out to them, though? Other than snail mail?
I mean,
Regina?
We do have record of the,
All the
people
restaurants?
that obtain mobile food truck licenses. We can certainly reach out to those individuals, or entities. And then there is a Minnesota Food Truck Association. We can certainly reach out to them for feedback, and they could disseminate that information to their,
And all of our restaurants.
And as our restaurants, do we have a list? We know who they are, how to
Yeah,
contact
Jenny?
them?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we don't license businesses. We can go off of our liquor license list.
They have one.
If they have one, but.
Yeah,
other
because
than
there are
that-
some, like, Saigon doesn't have a liquor license, but they, yes, yeah.
If I could, Madam Mayor, there is actually a list with contacts of all of our restaurants on Experience Burnsville's website.
Perfect. Does that range from Chianti to McDonald's? I mean, are we going after fast food restaurants as well?
All the
Yeah.
fast food restaurants are
Everyone.
also listed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, then we can use that list and reach out to all of them.
Agreed.
Okay, anything else? I think staff, you have all of the direction. Regina?
Yeah, I do just have a question, a couple of other items to consider, and we can certainly present this at the city council meeting, but question about, are you okay with a 3-year license for a
Yeah.
food truck
Yeah, I
specifically?
think that's a great idea.
And then one of the thoughts that came up through staff discussion was, are you okay with retroactively extending the food vendors that we have for 2019 to extend that
Sure.
2019 to 2021?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why,
Give them all credit
yeah.
for the 3 years.
And And then the last question, do you want to propose limits on the duration that a food truck can be in one spot? Or do you want the food truck vendor to move, for example?
Wouldn't that be
every
a
24
discussion
hours,
in
every
an
48
open
hours?
forum?
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, that I think would be a good discussion on an open forum.
There's
Yes,
a state statute on how long a food truck can be in one spot.
Yeah.
Really?
okay. So then we have laws that are by state, and we should make sure that we take a look at those laws that govern and restrict.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Dan? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
okay.
it seems like those that are getting a special event permit that are part of a bigger thing, like sitting in a parking lot overnight, not a problem. But the ones that are, and I didn't know of the law at the state level that they can only be parked for so long.
Yeah,
That might address both of them, but
yeah, and that might, yeah. you
I think no
probably-
parking on street overnight,
yeah, we don't
unless it's
have-
a special event, the street's blocked off and
Yeah,
it's a
we don't
known
have
special
overnight
event.
parking on our streets
Yeah,
anyway,
so,
They gotta move anyhow.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
members of the council, the question on that had to do with on overnight parking on private property. That's the question. Do you want them left overnight on private property outside of a special event? I can just see this coming up as a question.
Well, why don't we have that
'cause
as
it's
one
not-
of the issues that, to be discussed at the input? Because I think some of those folks who have private property, and you're thinking like a business that would have and they approve it, well, if they will have that on their property,
My th-
they're- yeah.
My thought was as long as it's operating, that I don't care. But unless state statute trumps
Yeah.
local. But if it's
It does.
parked dormantly and it's just being parked there for storage, then I would
No.
have a different opinion about
that's a different thing,
Yeah.
right?
I think, let's make sure that we have state statute and comply with state statute. We have to comply with the law. Yes.
Madam Mayor, the state statute gets to who's regulating the food operation, food
Yeah.
safety. It's the Department of
Yeah.
Health or
And
Department of Ag that's in the handout.
That's the health part
It's
of it.
21 days in any given location, and when we checked, it was a while ago, what that means is they consider a location a city. So any food vendor cannot be in Burnsville any more than 21 days in a year. I don't know how they go about enforcing that with the staff that they have. So we don't enforce the state laws, so that's why we're asking you if you have any requirements that you, again, getting to expectations and what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
If you think it's 21 days and you want us to be out monitoring that, we can. If you want them here longer, we can do that.
Well,
You know, if the state
as long
doesn't
as they're
enforce that, so-
operable and they're not,
Not stored, but being used.
it's not a storage and they're not.
That's
Yeah.
that's very
I was gonna
helpful.
say,
Then I
that may be the truth, but I see the trucks around the Twin Cities, and they're all summer long and without having to leave the city.
Okay, Jenny?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, different cities, some cities have their own health departments that have their own regulations.
Yeah.
So we are regulated by the state as
Yeah.
far as health department goes,
That's right.
and that's that regulation. Some
Yeah.
cities have different rules.
We don't just add more FTEs.
I would agree that as long as it's not being stored, leave it up to the property owner.
Yep.
Yeah,
I don't want to put a regulation on.
Right,
use.
agreed.
okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'm dancing.
Huh?
I need to buy over.
Okay, we're gonna have a break. We're gonna break for 5 minutes, and then we'll reconvene. Okay. I was thinking someone was going to say. by elected officials. Vince?
I just need some understanding and clarification on when we are going to post or make public stances on issues that are outside of our purview. Whether it be on social media or otherwise, if we should have conversations about those things before we publicly promote or condone them.
Example.
The Conference of Mayors gun thing, we tagged the official city account on a lot of that stuff. And so it kind of tied all of us into an opinion that we had not previously discussed.
I get it, and I took it out when the only reason was I wanted the city to know that I was in Washington on comprehensive background check. I won't do that again.
And I'm not trying to.
No.
But if, I just wanted to have a
Yeah.
collective discussion that
No,
if.
I understand. What I will do is I will just let Melanie and everybody, I mean, she knows when I went to Washington for the U.S. Conference of Mayors on that particular item on comprehensive background check.
And we all have
And
our.
that's, I think, the only thing that I had ever, but since I was in Washington, I thought, well, you better know what I'm talking about. And then
And
when
I want
it
you
was
to
brought
share.
to my attention, I edited and took that piece off.
And that's all I had. I just, if there was official communication from the city, then we should all be in agreement on it.
Yeah. And I understand your concern, and so I can let Melanie and others know.
Okay.
I don't have to do that. I think it's the only occasion that you've.
It is, and I don't.
Because you only see me hashtag.
Burnsville.
Yeah, my Burnsville Compassion, Burnsville Care,
Yes.
hashtag the I Love Burnsville, but not at City of Burnsville. The only reason I did that was because then they will know what I'm doing and saying in Washington. But that has already been put out there.
Okay.
But I will make sure that I will not at Burnsville.
And I would expect all of us to also maintain that if we're
Sure.
going to get
No,
into the public
makes sense.
forum with
Makes
national.
sense,
national
something that
items.
you might support might not be something I support.
Right.
And you might be out there lobbying for something that I might not. And so, but I learned about it, edit, and deleted it.
Okay. Short
And
and
so you
sweet.
will not find that. But before I left, the city knows where I'm going and what I'm doing.
And I thank you for doing those things.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's good. All right. Next, discussion on standing seam metal roofs. That's yours also.
Mine also. I've not had a roundtable
You
yet,
want
and I
the
did 2 in
planning
one night.
commission to do it again?
Yes. The last time this was talked about was in 2013, I believe.
And you were on the planning commission?
Was I?
13?
I don't think I was yet. No, because I
Not
bought my
yet?
house in 2014.
Oh, okay. So you would like, so
I-
it was just before you got on?
I would like to look at making standing seam roofs an allowed use without a conditional use permit on our permit applications.
So could staff then bring back some information for us to really review and then?
I have this awesome spreadsheet I spent all night making, and then I printed it, and I forgot to bring them. Oops. With a lot of really good information on it, so if you want to show the
Yeah.
camera.
No, I remember us looking at those.
My thought on this is that it is a superior product. We are talking about finding ways to increase the value of home ownership in Burnsville. These add tangible value to single-family homes.
Yeah.
And this is something that we can do internally that doesn't cost us anything. We're not, well, it would cut staff time to recodify things in that, but It's an easy way to offer people a road to increasing the value of their homes.
Why don't we have staff bring back the ordinance that we have in place and then what that would look like, because it'll go to the planning commission.
I have a quick
Yeah.
question. Are you aware of any insurance companies that give any kind of discounts for having this?
All of
It's a
them.
roof that you're not gonna replace for a long time.
Like 60 years, yeah. and
Their
it's protecting.
lifespan is
We're
between.
replacing 1,500 right now. So,
Asphalt shingles last 15 to 20 years. Standing seam metals are between 40 to 70 years.
Wow.
They're more durable, they're more energy efficient,
Yeah.
and they increase the resale value of homes.
Why don't you also share your research with us? Because that would be good. Share
had
it with staff and share it with
pamphlets.
us.
I can email this, or I have actually emailed it to Melanie.
Can you read them now?
Last night, and if you want to email it out,
I'd be
so I
happy
don't
to.
create a
Yeah, absolutely.
forum. But there's just a lot of good reasons why they should be allowed, and I understand we probably don't get a whole lot of applications for them now, but
Because I remember, Jenny, do you remember when we had, and we do allow some metal roofs?
yes, but they have to be. Oh, sorry.
Yes, we do, Madam Mayor, members of the council.
Because I remember going through this and we allow metal roofs.
My recollection is of the graphics, so we allow them if they're like shakes or shingle style to
Yeah.
kind of mimic the look or tile look
Yeah,
of what's been standard construction practice.
Yeah.
And that you need a conditional use permit to do the standing seam. I think the
Yeah.
thought was it looks more rural in characters. This is just my recollection
Yeah.
from the discussion years gone by,
Yeah,
so.
I remember.
My question to the council, while I do have the floor, would
Yeah.
be procedural. So we could add this to the Planning Commission 2020 work plan if you
That'll
want
be
them
good.
to look at it. If you want it to come back to you, we can bring it back probably January. We're booked up to work
I
sessions
would
till
rather
January,
have it
February.
start moving it forward to the planning commission, don't you? But let us see your research.
Oh, we're doing some good.
I'll send the research. I don't see if we've looked at this before. We're not starting from scratch and reinventing the wheel. But I value the planning commission's opinion as well.
Well, that's the
As do we.
process.
Sometimes we don't agree.
Well,
But
that's
we
the
always
process. That's the process. And the other is that
And I would say, Madam Mayor.
they're
if-
not going to be replacing any roofs now.
Well, there's still
Roof
are.
ice dams, roof collapse.
Yeah,
I would go with the majority of council on timing.
yeah. Jenny?
Last thing, we could add it to a housekeeping list, which we can do over the winter, and talking to the planners in advance of this. What does timing look like? If you know you want to do it, and then we don't have to spend the time researching other cities and all this stuff, we
Yeah.
can just change
It's a
the
pathway
ordinance. It's
forward.
the easiest thing.
Yeah.
If you know you want to change it, it's the most efficient way to get you to where you want. It's just a timing issue,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll
and
add it to the next housekeeping, which we think
yeah.
will be in January or February.
Housekeeping, and
Okay.
you just proceed.
Okay.
Okay, is that okay, everybody?
I believe so.
Yeah, all right, there's consensus.
Sweet.
I agree with it, by the way.
Okay,
I agreed the last time we talked about it.
okay,
Downloaded.
She didn't vote for it.
yeah, because
I was
we've done,
outvoted.
we already have metal
was
roofs, so let's just take a look at it and how do we
I tried. I said I don't
do
have a problem with standing
housekeeping
seam.
around that? We already have it,
What?
metal roofs.
Yes, but they have to mimic standard asphalt 3-tab shingle roofs.
This is the reason why we're gonna housekeep
They
it.
don't even make 3-tab anymore.
We're gonna do a housekeep amendment.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yes.
I think staff has it. We're moving forward. Okay,
Good.
Great. Next week will be efficient.
do you have any reports to make?
I spent so much time focusing on these two, I didn't prepare.
Okay, do you have any?
Dakota Broadband, we had our strategic meeting last month. The new contract for the city will be coming to us shortly to a work session, along with Kara, our executive director, to present to the council everything about that. So you'll all get copies of it very shortly, I'm assuming.
Okay. Kara?
No, I do not have anything to report.
Okay. Dan?
Yes. I have I-35 Solutions and MBTA Board.
Is this going to be an executive summary?
Will yours be an executive summary?
Oh, yeah.
Yours always goes longer than mine.
No, not really. No.
Do I get a redo?
I watch.
Yeah. Usually I don't have a lot to report, because mine are quarterly.
We went through our priority projects, and Ryan Peterson, our very own Ryan Peterson, is leads that group. And we hired a consultant, put together all of the projects going forward, and three of the 9 or 10 scored the highest from a technical aspect, which carries a little weight in deciding what the I-35 Solutions Group wants to get behind from a lobbying standpoint. I-35 494 interchange, kind of a no-brainer. I-35 Min-Pass Lane extension south, south of where it is now, which would go beyond south of Burnsville significantly, which I think is a great idea, and Lakeville was thrilled. And even Elko Newmarket representative was thrilled. Highway 13, number 3, then Highway 13 signal removals at Lynn, Washburn, and what's the third one? Anybody know? I forgot what it was. Dakota? Was that it? Yeah. So 3 lights between I-35 and 169 continue to clog Highway 13. So that's the 3rd highest ranking on our list. There were a lot of other projects, but those were the 3 that. So we're going to come back and decide on the top 5. Those 3 will be included. Top 5 that our lobbyist will then focus on with the legislators to lobby for the next who knows how long time. We also talked about the website, and Chair Workman brought up our website a few months ago, and she put up Commissioner Liz Workman, who is our I-35 chair. She put up a Facebook page for I-35, and now the discussion came back, and we said, our website really does need a facelift. So myself, Zach Johnson on the Lakeville City Council, and James Cloakashire, the Bloomington City staff member, who basically facilitates our meetings, administrative supports our meetings. The 3 of us are going to get together, and Bloomington has offered to use their website in-house resources to help us put up a new website. So that was nice of them to do that. MBTA board is pretty quick and easy. They had their big rodeo a couple Saturdays ago where drivers can enter to win the plaque for 2nd or 3rd for driving through several different obstacle courses set up at the Egan Bus Garage. That was cool. They had a great barbecue, phenomenal food inside the garage afterwards, and I think I was the only board member there representing the MBTA board. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we are the recipient of the Transit Provider of the Year Award, which was pretty cool at the award ceremony in St. Paul. We went to a dinner afterwards. It was fantastic. Thanks to MBTA for providing a wonderful celebration dinner, and to Schmitty Bus for picking up the bar tab, because MBTA couldn't do that. That is it.
Okay, Municipal Legislative Commission, we met, and we had Commissioner Cynthia Bowerly, and she is the Commissioner of Revenue, and she was exceptional in outlining what's going on, very knowledgeable, and she did a great presentation. And then we had our legislative agenda for MLC, but nothing. It was just broad so that the committee can go and work on it. And then we looked at dates for our meeting with legislators. So that will be coming. And the Savage Burnsville Joint Council did not meet. We canceled. It was supposed to be this morning, but there wasn't anything to discuss. Metro cities, we're all done.
Yes.
With all of the work that we need to do. The Burnsville Community Foundation canceled its meeting because there was so many were going to the firehouse open house. And
excellent. Maybe the next.
That's all I have. Is there anything else? Jenny, you have anything else? Melanie, do you have anything?
Madam Mayor, I do not, thank you.
Greg,
No, Madam Mayor.
do you? Okay, very
We
good.
should talk
Oh,
about
a great,
Our volunteer awards dinner last night.
pardon me?
Should recognize our volunteers from last evening.
It was really a good event. And the Family Fest was a hit. It was really great. So
There was
those
really
were
good
really
traffic
good.
at that.
And the firehouse open house, even in the rain, we had a lot of folks, a lot of families come through. So a lot of great things going on. That's it. And we stand adjourned by acclamation. So.